Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of the special meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the Municipal Complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers, indicating this special meeting would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 o'clock p.m. on Monday, March 24th, 2014. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll of the council.
Councilman Chase.
Here.
Councilwoman Francois.
Here.
Councilman Kramer.
Here.
Mayor Levine.
Here.
Councilman Prasad.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Regan.
Here.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Vasanella. Councilman Wright.
Okay, thank you. We're here, we have a quorum, it's a special meeting of the council. We have two items on our agenda. One is a discussion of energy aggregation, and one is what is probably going to be the wrap-up of our budget hearings, in particular, the capital budget today and any other wrap-up that we have to do is most likely happening this evening. In a moment, I'm going to open the meeting up for public discussion. That's going to be the only time this meeting that public can speak of anything in general, and people can come speak and tell us anything on his or her mind. So I guess we'll get to that now. It's on our agenda, which is by our clerk, Ms. Woodbury. We're at item number 4, which is public discussion. Is there a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Meeting is open for public discussion on any item of interest. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand.
Seeing no one come forward, I move to close the public discussion.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Public discussion portion of this meeting is closed. Thank you very much. So now we'll get to our two discussion items, 5A and B. The first is energy aggregation. And we are happy and honored to have our ombudsman from the Division of Economic Development and Energy Policy, Gary Finger, here to give us the overview of energy. And Mr. Vorenlocker, did you want to interject anything before?
No, I think Mr. Finger is prepared to make his presentation to council.
Okay, Mr. Finger, again, thanks for coming on over here. Oh, and I'm sorry, yes, if you could speak into the microphone, that way our audio picks you up. It's complicated here.
Okay.
All
Now,
right.
Eric,
If that's 3 or 4 inches from you, we pick it up perfectly.
if I need to be corrected as I go along, let me know. Normally, my voice projects pretty well. I appreciate the opportunity to be invited here tonight. Energy aggregation has gotten to be a very hot topic. I'm sure everybody here on council, as well as residents, have received 1 or 2 phone calls about ways to save energy. And I'm being facetious because you've probably received hundreds. This is an opportunity. Third-party energy suppliers have had the opportunity since the market was deregulated back in 1999. And I say that because the process in the last few years has really seemed to heat up. In 2003, the state of New Jersey introduced a Government Energy Aggregation Act, which allows the municipality, governing body, to put together all the residents in one pot, if you will, so that you can go out to bid for energy on everybody's behalf. Now, the dates only become important when you understand since 1999, really only about 14% of the residents have joined up with third-party energy suppliers. There's been a lot of reluctance to do so. People have a lot of concerns. We discuss with groups all the time what their concerns are, what's permitted in the marketplace, and when somebody says, I can save you 15% on your bill, we tell them exactly what that means, because it's true, but there needs to be some clarity. Since 2003, you would think, well, now municipalities have this opportunity, and they're jumping on the bandwagon. The reality is, the first town that went out to bid was in 2013, which was Plumstead Township. So 10 years after the act, the first one came out. So what is energy aggregation? What the goal is, obviously, is to conform with the state's energy master plan. We want to reduce the energy usage. Well, why do we want to do that? In part because, yes, you're going to save money. There's no question about it. We have an aging infrastructure. We have greater demand than we really do supply. We don't produce a lot of energy in the state, and that usually means we have to go purchase it elsewhere. So you're paying demand rates. We're paying more. It's no different than putting up a lot of large businesses on a two-lane highway. Sooner or later, that's going to fail. So this is a way to have a lot more competition and have it be a little bit more controlled. So, as I pointed out, I'm not going to go through some of this since I already mentioned, since it was deregulated, and I have to use that word deregulated. You'll hear me say this a couple times. What that means is there's a lot of, as you've seen a lot of the ads for third-party energy suppliers, and I'm sure the residents have seen this, we don't regulate that end of the business. So what they're saying to you, we hope that there's truth in advertising. What I like to say to people, and I've been with the board 3 years, so I'm still have a private sector mentality, read the fine print, because that 1-point font is really where the details are. And it might be, yes, it's 7.99 cents per kilowatt hour. It sounds great, because I'm paying 11.5 right now. But that's only good for 30 days. So the fine print is where it catches people. What you have the ability to do as a governing body is to cut through all of that, prevent all these phone calls and the mailers if you choose to do so. Because once you have gone down the road of an aggregation for the community, all those calls stop. You will control that. And what I mean control, you are regulating it to the point that they have no reason to make those kinds of phone calls anymore. When you get started with this is a program that allows businesses and residents to save money on the supply portion of your bill. Remember I said about reading the fine print and the percentages that you're going to save? Okay, there's a supply portion and there's a transmission portion. The wires are still there. You still have to pay for them. So that second portion of the bill, the supply portion, is the only portion that we're talking about. So regardless of if somebody's already doing this on their own, regardless if you're going to do this on behalf of people, it's only the supply portion that we're talking about here. The way the program is designed, and you're going to like this, there's no out-of-pocket expense on the part of the municipality. Any monies that are expended during this process with the consultants and doing an outreach, this is all being reimbursed. Nothing beyond that can be done. And this is something we do look at very carefully. So, and we have had, and I have to point out a couple of areas that you have to be sensitive to, and that is third-party suppliers who feel that their market's about to be taken away from them are going to want to court you to participate and work with them because they have a better solution. That's fine. However, be careful about offering golf outings, vacations, dinners, because none of that is going to be is acceptable. Obviously, you folks know this anyway, but there's a lot going on, and we have had a couple towns that made some slips. We will look at that very carefully. So, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to authorize by ordinance to become an aggregator. You have a choice when you do this, and this is another provision in the law. Unless you have the expertise in-house, and quite frankly, most municipalities don't, you're going to hire an energy consultant. You can hire an energy consultant off of our list. They're all agents that have to be licensed with the Board of Public Utilities. You can either hire directly off the list or go out for RFP. When you go RFP, all the agents receive that notification, and they will submit a bid proposal to you. Now you say, well, why do I want to do that if I can just select one? You have that option. The law permits it. If you were to ask my opinion, best practice, right now we're strongly recommending go out for an RFP. It's the cleanest way to do it. It's the most transparent way to do it. Let them bid on it. You don't want to leave money on the table by making a selection. You're not paying for it. This comes right, ultimately this will go back to the third-party energy supplier. So you say again, well, why can't I just make a selection then, since it's not going to cost me anything? Directly it doesn't. Indirectly it does, because they're ultimately charged to the third-party energy suppliers who are going to bid on it. That's where they're going to recoup their money. So ultimately, it's the ratepayers that are going to pick up any fees that are in here. So that's what I want you to be sensitive to. Again, it's your choice. You can go out either way. They're both permitted by law. You're going to be, we suggest that you're going to advertise, the consultants. The consultant's going to gather a list of all the residents, all the businesses who are currently being supplied by your supplier right now, which I believe up here is public service. Okay. They're going to get a list of all their ratepayers that are on there. You'll have that list. They will be notified by form letter, which is fine. My suggestion is every means that you have available is how you want to do your outreach. A form letter, I'm sure we're all bombarded with all kinds of mail. We might not look at it. If you put it on your website, that's great. There will be a faction of people who may not look at that. If you have an email list, there will be a faction of people who don't get that. So just be sensitive to the fact that you're going to have pockets of your community that's going to be difficult to reach. Again, the steps, and some of this I'm going to elaborate on a little bit more as we go along. The law doesn't permit any concession fees, finder's fees. As I mentioned, that only makes sense. You're going to enter into the electric company or gas company if you do this as a gas option as well. The public awareness program, as I mentioned, if you have pockets that you think are difficult, and I'll speak regarding my town because obviously I'm familiar with it. We have a lot of seniors in certain areas of town. When we did out in the past in some of our programs, we actually wanted to go right into their communities and do a little town hall meeting so that they know about it. And I say that only because the pushback that you're going to likely receive will be from those people who don't have the knowledge, who are fearful of what this program is, who say, and I've been to enough of these meetings that I've heard the residents make comments, that they're concerned that you're taking away their right. And it's their right to have whoever supplies their electric. And I word it that way because the way the program is designed, this is an opt-out program. What does opt-out mean? Opt-out means that they're automatically in it. They don't have to sign up for it. They're automatically in the program, and that's some of the pushback that you're going to get. Now, they can opt out anytime they like. They have multiple opportunities before they started. Once the program starts and they're in it, they can opt out afterwards. 30 days notice, done. So it's not anything that's long-term and it's binding. The reservation that you hear from most residents is, I like my supplier, I have all these wonderful services, and as soon as you take that away, who am I going to call? Your bill has two sections on it, the supply portion and the transmission portion. Public service, frankly, doesn't care. They don't care who uses the third-party supplier, if it's them or if it's something, they have to go out and buy it themselves. So nothing changed. If their power goes out, you're still going to call public service. In public service's case, they have a wonderful insurance program for appliances. I have it, my mother has it, she loves it. Doesn't change. If you have a problem with your dishwasher, you're still going to call public service if you have the insurance program. So nothing changes in that regard. So again, they have the ability to go out anytime that they want. If the residents already have a third-party energy supplier, they're not part of this program. They're already under a separate contract. You have no jurisdiction over that. You can't change that. If they want to be part of this program, because maybe they see an opportunity for a cheaper rate, and they probably would, they have to negotiate with, they have to look at their own contract that they made with that third-party supplier. And those terms of those contracts are all over the place. So advise them, look at your contract. If you have a penalty, please be careful. if you're going to drop it. Non-residential customers, businesses, they have to opt in, so they are not automatically part of this program. Businesses, frankly, 45% of the businesses in the state already have third-party energy suppliers. They've already negotiated some pretty reasonable deals. If they can become part of this program, it frankly helps the entire group. You know, again, supply and demand. You've got a large group of interested residents and businesses, so it makes the ultimate bidding process that much more lucrative. So again, you want to do an outreach to your business community, ask them if they're interested in participating. They have the same provisions. They would have to opt. Once they're into the program, they can still get out of the program. So, but understand, most of them are already part of a third-party supply basis now. They're very conscious of their energy bills. You know, we have other programs that we certainly love the opportunity to talk to them and even to you about as other ways we can save some energy costs. We put this line in here that it should be obvious. There is an exception to, you say, well, my rate will go higher. No, the law says it can't. You cannot sign up and enter into a contract with a third-party supplier for a higher rate than you're currently paying now. So that should be a given. That should dissuade some of the fear that residents may have. There is one exception, and that is if you choose to go with a clean energy choice, which is incorporating a portion, which you control, of renewables. So if it's you feel that you're, based upon perhaps residents' input, that you would like to also work with wind power or solar power coming into these programs, that's fine. You can say, I want 20% of my program to use wind, to encourage that industry. That's fine to do that. Keep in mind, your rate will likely be higher than what you're currently paying. And you've had this choice. Everybody in this room, business, resident, has had this choice for a long time on their bills. You can go with clean power choice now. But your current rate will probably increase by about 75%. And there's many people that do it, and that's fine. That's their choice. So if you chose to do it as a council position, again, make that part of your outreach program, outreach awareness. I had a community that is very interested in doing that, small community, and I said just be very aware of what your pushback will be. So the more exposure that people can get, the more participation they can get, the better I think everybody's going to be. This is just clarifying a little bit more. You have two ways you can do this as far as the options, and one way is to let you can actually go out and bring an energy supplier on and have people opt in before the town actually advertises for bids, so you can do it ahead of time. Option number 2 says, all right, I'm going to go out for bids, and now everybody's going to be already in the program, and you just have to opt out. Again, which way you want to do it, my suggestion, best practices would be keep people aware of what the program is that you're interested in doing. Make them aware of this process, and you're going to get far greater participation and cooperation, and ultimately that's really what you want. Business customers, it's the same thing. They still have to opt into this program. It doesn't matter if it's before or after, it's still an opt-in as far as they're concerned. When you go out for the RFP, after you've hired the consultant, you've done your notifications, your next RFP will be the actual third-party energy supplier themselves. Once again, there's two ways that this can be done. It can be done the traditional RFP method where everybody is submitting sealed bids. The other option is, it's called a reverse energy auction, which is permitted through a DCA. You go out on electronic bid. Takes about 10 minutes. Many towns have done this. They love it. It works perfectly fine. What it is, you're indicating, and again, the agent will put all this together for you. There's only a few companies right now that are authorized to do reverse auctions, but they will actually bid on your energy use. You'll watch the numbers before you, and at some point they'll stop. You can either accept it or you don't accept it. So that's your choice. Which way is better? There's pros and cons to both. Neither way is wrong. They're both an open process. So that's something to keep in mind. I put Plumstead Township up here, not because we have any affiliation to Plumstead, but they happen to be the first ones to take this on. They did it an extensive outreach to their community. They had a lot of cooperation with it. The reason I do mention that particularly is because they went out for this is their second year now that they went out again. They did a one-year contract that they went out for. They had a lot of success with it, so they said, let's do it again. So they have done this the right way. They've done it all through RFP process. We haven't heard anything to the contrary. The bids that go out, the BPU, as well as our rate council, has to review these contracts. We want to make sure that there's proper form that they follow so that there aren't any missteps. If there are anything that's not being properly indicated, we're going to tell you and say that this is not proper. Please make a correction. So we are watching the process, and we won't see any missteps. The only misstep that I have run into, and it really gets down to, again, the transparency. If the outreach is not sufficient, you will get feedback. That shows up in the paper, or I get a lot of phone calls. That's part of my fun part of the job. But I think you can avoid that. Again, as long as you're doing as much outreach as you can, you're going to have a section of community saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to change utility suppliers. That's fine. Nothing will change for them. Usually down the road, they will say, I may want to participate with this program. And they would have an opportunity to do that as well. So that's the program. It's not a real hard program. It's not that complicated. I'm going to leave a copy of the presentation with you this evening. Also a summary of what the legislation has defined, how they've defined this program. But, you know, if you follow the general steps, it really becomes pretty effortless. As far as total cost savings, I know I frequently get that question, how much am I going to save? It varies. It depends on market conditions. Right now, the market, you might not get as much savings today as perhaps a year ago. But we're coming out of the winter, so at this point, there may be a little bit more, this may be an opportunity. I really can't tell. What we've seen in the past, and we don't get all the numbers, it's just sporadic reports, because this isn't something that has to come to us. On average, if we're looking at average residential usage, we're looking at a savings probably somewhere around $120 a year. So to some that means a lot, to others they won't switch for that. If they're a heavy user, obviously they're going to receive a lot more in savings. And that's the program. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has any at this time.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Finger. Yes, Councilman Kramer.
So I ran into you at League of Municipalities, heard the talk, and that kind of generated this, and I've been pushing for it ever since. I'm going to ask you a question. I was trying to ask Howard Boyle questions at that, and you hit them all out of the park. I'm going to ask a question because I think the public's going to want to hear this question. You've already answered it for me. So if, you know, Sandy comes again and knocks out all the power, well, gee, we're getting a cut rate. They're going to want to let the people paying more back in first. So they're going to send their crews to those people first, so they get their power back first. They'll make more money that way. I'm going to be the last one to get power because I'm paying the least for the power. Is that a problem?
It doesn't work like that at all. Quite frankly, if the power goes out and it's got to be restored, they have a series of steps that they have to follow to restore the power, which usually starts with the substations and starts working its way out. They don't look at a list to say who's on third-party energy suppliers, and quite frankly, they don't make money on the energy portion of their bills anyway. They make it on the transmission. So to them, it doesn't make any difference at all. They want to get the power back up, and that will happen. Hopefully that'll happen faster than it used to happen because we have new steps that have been put into place for that.
Okay. And then you can say you can opt out. Can you opt back in after you opt out?
You can opt back in. You're going to find there's going to be some reluctance. There really isn't much of a reason to do that. I mean,
Well, someone opts out and then they decide, gee, that was stupid. My neighbors are saving money. I'd like to get back in.
And they can certainly do that. We haven't seen a lot of that. We've seen really nothing of that to date that I'm aware of anyway. I don't know if there'd be too many scenarios. It'd be more of a reluctance of people saying, I don't want to do anything until I get a good track record because I'm just reluctant to do so. So, I mean, this is what we're seeing in Plumstead. The people who didn't opt in the first time, They're saying I can save some money, so maybe I'll do that. It's not a lot of money, but it adds up.
And then my last question is, I understand there are times of the year, you kind of alluded to it, that are best to negotiate. If we're just not in sync the first year, can we do a 10-month contract or a 9-month contract so that next year we would be in better sync?
Usually, you're going to want to go out for 12 months. I haven't seen anything less than 12. You can go out for 2 years. Consultants will guide you through that process, which is why you want to get one of them on board. Most towns do a 1-year contract because they want to see how this is going to work. They want to lock in those rates. And given the volatility of how the market is sometimes, there's a reluctance to go too far out. The problem that a lot of residents had with third-party suppliers is they signed a contract called a variable rate contract, kind of like a mortgage. They said, this is great. Boy, these are really low rates. The problem is they're all tied to market. And if you didn't lock in that rate, as a lot of people didn't, then during this bad winter that we had, and they were buying on the spot market, those rates went through the roof. And there's nothing that can be done about it. So lock it in, we suggest for a year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, others?
I just had a quick
Councilman
question.
Sherman?
Could you describe the opt-out process? What does the resident have to do?
Check a box, mail it back.
And mail it back, okay. And we'll be giving them that information that,
They're required by law to get that information.
okay.
It's, like I said, it is a form letter. They can write on the spot, mark it, say, I don't want to participate, and mail it back, and they're not part of the program. If for some reason they misplaced the letter, and they're into the program, and they get very upset by that, all they do is to notify the supplier, they don't want to be part of it, and they're out of the program. There's a billing cycle, so there's probably 30 days, but that's very typical. And then, is there a problem going back to the primary utility? Positively not. They have to take you back. The only time that they don't, and we see this with third-party energy suppliers, and that's if bills haven't been paid, then those bills have to be satisfied before the utility will take you back, and that's in the statute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilwoman Francois?
So in one of your earlier slides, you recommended that the governing body or the township would hire a consultant. So my question is, what type of overhead administrative costs would or
None.
typically occur with that?
We don't actually get a copy of what the fees are, but all those fees are really passed through. Ultimately, the third-party supplier picks that up. All the expenses that you incurred during this process, the third-party supplier picks up. So it's no out-of-pocket to the municipality whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you also mentioned about the transmission versus the supply and demand. So when you say transmission, I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Transmission's the wires. In other words, somebody has to pay for the maintenance of the wires. The power has to be sent to a home or a business somehow. It's through the wires and the poles. So those are your transmission or distribution costs.
Oh, okay.
They stay the same. It doesn't matter which truck drives your roads. If it's FedEx or UPS, you're still maintaining the roads. That's really how you look at it.
So it's really the source of where you're getting the energy is where you're
It's really the
incurring-
roadway. I mean, the source.
I'm trying to figure out
When
where
a
the
company is
reduction
buying
comes in.
power, they're actually, they'll go out into the market, they might be buying power from West Virginia, a coal company, for example. It could be a power producer in western Pennsylvania that maybe is a gas supply. Coal is very cheap, so that's not uncommon. So we don't always know where the power's coming from, because we don't produce a lot of it in New Jersey. That may be changing, but for right now, that's why a lot of it is brought in from outside. So they all flow through distribution lines, transmission lines, and we don't really know that.
Okay, so the reduction in cost is from the supplier
Correct.
itself. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, Councilman Chase.
Can the municipality set up a contract in which individuals, residents in the town can opt for a renewable energy within the overall contract?
Yes. You can set up the contract so that you've got actually two contracts. They'll set that up for you, that you'll have some who will, they would have to opt in purposely on that part of the program.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would be automatically part of the basic program. But if you wanted to split it, you certainly can structure that in the body of your RFP and your outreach. I would caution people about doing that. It's perfectly legal to do it. What you don't want to do is add additional confusion to a new process.
Okay, Councilwoman Sherman?
Just a quick question. The consultant that we use is only for the RFP process? That consultant doesn't stay with us forever, do they?
Nope.
Just for that process?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Prasad? Oh, and Deputy Mayor Regan.
Yeah, what has been your experience when this particular township tried to implement it? What percentage of the township residents opted in to the program?
If I remember conversations correctly, I think they had about a 65% participation rate the first year. The second time around, I've heard the numbers higher. I haven't heard what the exact percentage is. So you're going to get a group of people who are just going to say, no, I don't want it. And frankly, you've got a group that are not qualified because they already have third-party suppliers.
Okay. I've had experience with trying to do a solid waste disposal utility here in Franklin, and I had my head handed to me. Okay? And waste management has got deep pockets, and I'm confident that these utilities have very deep pockets. And they can, Waste Management was offering them, $50 coupons, all kinds of things, and this whole council chamber was full of people saying, you're big government, big brother, what are you doing? You're making choices for me, this is un-American. I don't want those choices made for me. Let me make my own choices. You are nobody to be making those decisions. Even though we tried to make the same arguments, collective buying, cheaper discount savings, everything, didn't work. And eventually we just gave up on that whole program. And, until and unless I can see that this is not going to end up the same way, I wouldn't even touch it.
Well, I can't tell you it won't, because you will always get pockets of people, you'll always get pockets of people saying the exact same thing. You're not going to touch my utility company. I've had them since Edison came up with electric, and they don't want to change. And that's fine. They can make
That was
that
Ben
decision.
Franklin.
Well, that's true,
And his
too.
key, yeah.
But to your first point, as far as the offers, it won't be the utility companies. They don't care. This is not where they make their money. We have never seen that. We don't expect to see that. But you will see third-party energy suppliers try to do that end around, because they'll look at Franklin and say, I'm about to get cut out of a market. So now I'll come out with all my promotions and scare tactics. They're there. They'll do that. We've seen that in the past. That we can't regulate.
Good point.
Well, we had the independent waste haulers who were doing the same thing here in Franklin when we were trying to do the, solid waste disposal utility. And we could regulate when the trucks came and picked up the trash, everything, so that you didn't have them at all hours of the night and everything else. But still, there's something to be said for collective buying, but it's just inherently un-American to do so. And the competitors will make sure that message gets right across. And now you as a municipality are fighting your own local merchants or whoever is the local energy supplier.
There's no question you're going to be seeing that. I would run into this even in my own community, where I would be hearing the offers that if you joined a particular third-party supplier, they'll make a contribution to the community or my church. You say, well, how can this be a bad thing? When you look at the fine print, it wasn't worthwhile to a lot of people. It didn't make sense. Nothing is free. and this is what we tell seniors all the time, if there's a presentation made and they say they're going to save you a lot of money, it comes with a cost. If they think you're going to get a free gift card out of it, it comes with a cost. So, part of what I like about this program, it's going to make all that go away. All those, I don't know if you receive phone calls from residents saying, all I do is get phone calls and mailers day in and day out, I'm sick and tired of this. I get a lot of those phone calls. But that stops in communities when they start with these programs, because there is no more market. It has just been taken away.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Regan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. So I thought in my review of this ordinance, or the state statute, that it actually didn't force municipalities to opt in. I did see something there that said government entities are required to opt in.
Government entities have a choice. You do not have, as a government entity, you do not have to participate. You may not, if you're part of a co-op, you're not even permitted to.
So if we do this,
You don't
if we did this, would the town facility have to?
have to? No. You may not be permitted to, again, if you're part of a co-op. You may already have a rate that's negotiated that is awfully good, which is, again, why a lot of businesses have already switched over. So I don't know what your position is, but that's something that the consultant would help you analyze as well. So, yeah, you're not required to participate in the program as a governing body.
Okay, but they would have to, if they're in the town, they'd have to go through the same process of opting out. They're not.
As a municipality, you would have to opt in. You would be treated as a business.
Oh, okay, so that's my point. So
Yeah.
you'd actually have to opt in.
Yes.
Okay, because it's just interesting, if the thing is so good for everybody, why
When you do it for yourself.
why residents have to opt out, but the municipality that's applying the law has to opt in? I'm lost in that logic.
Well, it's the way the law was written.
Yeah, and like you said, there's nothing free, so that concerns me when people write laws that don't apply to themselves.
There's many cases where you've already negotiated a better rate, because you have the ability to do that. You may have the ability to participate with a co-op, you may have the ability to participate with a state energy contract. And if that's the case, it wouldn't make any sense for you to do it.
Okay.
So you've got a little bit more flexibility at your disposal than a resident does. And again, this is really designed to aid the residents. It's to aid your community that they can act as a larger body as you can. So that's really what this was put in place for in the first place.
Okay. All right, so I have a house, I have solar panels, and when that process went around, I took basically the equivalent of a home equity loan with PSE&G, that my units is all built through them. How's this affect me now? Like, we do this, like, how is PSE&G, like, they were getting my units off of my...
You're still using the same amount of energy.
No,
The
but the
difference
billing
is-
on my bill, how does...
It's not going to affect it at all. The only effect it's going to have for you is that the cost of the energy that you're using is less. That's all.
So,
In other words, it's, after
I forgot the unit.
whatever the solar power has generated, and you are in the evening where you're not generating power anymore, you're now going back on the grid, if you will, you're still using the same amount of energy today as you used yesterday. The difference is it's going to conceivably cost you a couple cents less.
Okay, but the SRECs that are being,
Has
it
nothing to
doesn't
do with
affect
SRECs at
anything.
all. That's what I mean. The energy used, because the SREC's generated based upon the amount of consumption, the amount of megawatts that you're generating over the course of the year.
All right.
So that won't change.
Because what was interesting is, as you're aware, Montgomery is one of the towns that opt in. And on their website, they say if you have solar panels, this would not, you should really, think about it. This wouldn't be most beneficial to you.
I don't see what difference it makes. The only thing I would say, if they didn't provide this, they should have, you're not going to see as much of a savings because you're not spending that much in the first place. So obviously, this is all tied to the amount of usage. Usage is determined by what is pulling off of the grid or the distribution lines. So if you produce your own, you're not getting that much off the grid. Your actual dollar savings isn't going to be that great. So again, it becomes a choice. Do you want to switch it over? Instead of saving maybe $120 a year, maybe it'll save, because of solar, maybe you'll only save $15 a year. And I don't know, don't quote me on those numbers, but it would be substantially less, I'll put it that way.
Okay. You had mentioned that if the rates are guaranteed, in doing this, the rates will be guaranteed to be lower than what?
You're currently paying.
So through PSE&G?
Correct. So if you're paying 11.5 cents a kilowatt hour now, it's got to be less than that.
Okay. And so I sign a contract for a year, and now I don't want to do it anymore. Does we just fold back into PSE&G?
Yep.
And we fold in at the current rate structure?
Correct.
There's no penalty or
No
any
harm, no
sort of...
foul. Nope, can't do that.
Okay. So I have a property, I owned it, I opted in, I sell that property during the period, and now the new owner comes in. Are they forced to, is it done with the unit, or because now they're new residents, when they take over, they get the decision of they're opting in or opting out?
They would be part of the system, but again, they have the ability to opt out anytime they want. If they say, I don't like what you just did, say, I want out, and within 30 days, they'll be out.
Okay. And is the opposite true, that they were not in, but the previous owners were not in, and now when they get into the town, they want to opt in? Will they have
They
the
should be
ability
able to
do
still
that?
opt in. There may be some hesitancy to do that because if it's a new account. That I would have to get back to you about. I haven't really seen that come up.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have one more.
Councilwoman Sherman?
This is both electricity and gas?
It could be.
It could be, and who makes that choice?
You do.
Okay.
You'd work with your energy consultant. I'm trying to think of any cases where we've dealt with gas. Really, they're going out for electric in almost every case that we've seen.
And why not gas?
Gas rates have been coming down, so the market is not as competitive. It's hard to beat the current prices that most people have. Electric is a different story.
And this is what the consultant will be guiding us through?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He'll look at the rates, he'll make the recommendations, you'll make the call.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Francois?
So does that mean I would get my gas bill from PSE&G and my electric bill from whoever this new supplier would be,
Nope, it's all in one bill.
all on one bill? Thank you.
Again, that's also part of the statute. It's got to be one bill, all bills have to be consolidated. It's too bills are confusing enough the way they're currently written, and if you start splitting them apart, it's impossible.
Right. That would be a concern.
Yeah.
Councilman Prasad?
Just what's in it for the BPU?
There's nothing, we're the regulators.
Okay.
There's nothing that we get out of it, we're just trying to guide the process, make sure it's done correctly so that you as a ratepayer can save money, potentially save money or will save money. We don't want to see any harm come to any citizens in the state of New Jersey. So we are purely regulators. There's nothing we get out of it one way or the other. This is the law that was put into place. We want to make sure it's enacted correctly and fairly. And I get to answer all the questions when people make phone calls to me.
Okay, I have a couple questions. People, like I say, can do this now on their own, basically. I'm going to use the example of the trash hauler, since people do it privately here. Can, if someone doesn't like one trash company, they call the other and switch. If, forgetting us, let's say people can go to different companies, do they have the ability to switch fairly often, or are they locked in? Or is that private contract that an aggregator will give them?
If individuals do this on their own, they have, it depends on the terms of the contract that they've signed. Again, since we don't regulate it, I only come in after the fact that somebody signed it and said, I don't like my contract. There's not a lot I can do about it. But and some contracts are written so that residents aren't bound by any length of term, so they can get out any time without penalty, and they can join another third-party supplier. It becomes tedious, and I wouldn't think that that's going to happen often, just because it's hard for them to keep up with not much of a savings either way. So if they switch over for, a tenth of a cent, how much are they really going to see as a savings? Not very much.
Okay,
But they have that ability.
all right, thanks.
And the reverse is true, and again, we see it more of the businesses that have signed up for suddenly 3-year contracts, and they find that it is a poorly written contract. There's penalty clauses to get out, but they thought they were doing the right thing because it's 3 years. And I tell people, and we can go to our website, we have tips for purchasing third-party suppliers, which apply to any business, resident, municipality. Just ask some questions. What's the term of the contract? Is there a penalty? And read the contract. Don't do things over the phone.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Kramer.
So one of the differences between this and, I was in the audience for that whole waste management thing, is council kind of bailed on it before there was any kind of contract going. So people were asking, well, what if I don't want to do it? And council at the time didn't really have an answer for that because there was no finalization yet. I think one of the differences here is if we go into this, we're going into it where people will already know. If someone comes to council and says, I don't like it, I don't like what you're doing, our answer is, then don't do it. I don't know, maybe we could even have slips of paper at the council meeting. Here, fill this out right now and you're out. I don't know if that's possible. But
Absolutely.
So I really think there's a bit of a difference here with that. I've been getting emails from people saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? So there's already a constituency out there that wants it. So I think there's less political risk to this and less, I think you're right, there will be angst and there will be people who say, you're not going to control my electrons, and fine. I do remember during the waste management, a woman coming up and saying, I know her name, came up and said, I have a relationship with my garbage collector, and I don't want to lose them. And okay, so they won't lose their electrons. And I think that's a difference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I can also say that we probably have about 37 communities that are in the process of going through aggregation right now. When I say the process, it might be part of the notification or the RFP process or about to award the bid. We probably have about 14 or 15 towns that have awarded bids and are moving, have this in place, but we see a lot more coming. I probably field calls on a couple a week. In some cases, we have municipalities that want to band together to do it, and that can be done. I have some more words of caution about that, but certainly of a town of your size, there's no reason to do that. These would be very small communities. You might have 1,000 people. But, there is more interest. There's certainly a lot more towns that are participating with these programs. So it's, they've watched it carefully. They've read the papers. Usually if there's anything negative, it's going to be in the paper. And they're trying to make every effort they can to avoid those pitfalls.
Okay, Councilman Prasad.
Just initially, there were a lot of horror stories of bait and switch and all kinds of things going on, where energy vendors and middlemen were coming in and doing all kinds of, dangling all kinds of carrots for people to come in, and then all of a sudden the rates went up and all kinds of hidden charges were there. So I heard horror stories about it. Now, has that changed?
That can't happen with this program. There can't be bait and switch offers. Third-party energy suppliers, they're used car salesmen. And that's part of what they are out there doing. They'll offer the gift cards, they'll offer the donations, they'll offer variable rates, and that's the bait and switch. This program strips all that away. It will prevent that from happening, because you're doing it by RFP. You're not doing it by friendly conversation you're having with somebody on the street. This is an RFP process. They have to bid on it, Everybody can see what all the bids are before you even award the bids.
No, these are organized telemarketers preying on individual
And you'll see them come out of the woodwork when they know that you're ready to go forward with this program, because they want one last bite of that apple. So just to be aware, that will most likely happen. But again, that doesn't change the structure and the protection that this program has in place.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilman Kramer.
So I've been reading a lot about this since the league went to a meeting actually that I organized about it to have, where we heard one of the consultants, thank you, speak. I've talked to Mr. Shane, who contributed to writing the laws for this. So I'm very much on board with it. And what I would like us to do tonight is to direct the manager to go to send out an RFP or begin the process of, I know he has a sample RFP, start working with our attorney on it, send that out. It commits us in no way whatsoever. We can send out the RFP and then decide not to accept anyone's offer. It just gets this ball rolling so that we'll be saving money for our citizens that much sooner. We have discussed this in a couple of subcommittees already, and I'm just hoping we can start this process now without any commitment now. And while that's going on, our council members can continue to study it.
I do have a question. At what point did you say that we should start notifying the public of what we're doing? There was at some RFP point, I'm not sure which one.
Once you bring the consultant on, the consultant will get a list of all the names of all the ratepayers in the community, and they will be notified. By law, they have to be notified.
So consultant first, then notification?
Correct.
Okay.
Just
Deputy Mayor
follow up
Regan.
on that question, I guess I lost the process. So following that line of thought, we do an RFP without the consultant?
The RFP you have a choice. You can do an RFP to get the consultant, or you can go to the list that is provided on the BPU's website, Board of Public Utilities website, and select one. You have that option.
And then there's a second RFP for the
actual bid, that is correct.
Third-party supplier.
So I'm just advocating the first RFP to get the consultant who will do the educating of the people, et cetera, educating us more and more, and we can opt out at any time along that way.
At no cost, that's correct. Any costs that are incurred by the consultant during the initial phase prior to RFP is borne by him alone.
So I'm going to stress that point, and I have been studying this, is we could get the consultant, we can have them advertise, we can have them go to Somerset Run and Canal Walk and Parkside and everywhere else, and spend hours and hours and hours convincing the public, mailing things to the public, and then we can decide we don't want to do it, and other than our time, we haven't spent a cent.
Councilwoman Francois?
Well, I do have a concern about bringing somebody on, starting a process, and I haven't done enough due diligence myself to really understand it, and getting the public involved and riling up people, and then at some point we decide, oh no, we don't want to do that because we've learned more things about it. And there's one unknown here that I'm not sure about. I'm hearing that, the supply can come from wherever it needs to come from, and I've been hearing a lot about fracking, and I'm concerned that plays into this. I don't know. And I know Councilman Kramer has had a lot of time to do his due diligence. I would be very concerned about starting a process, and I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the people, but I don't know enough about it to even think about bringing on a consultant.
No, I mean, that's a concern that you as a council have to make.
but as far as fracking would go, how do you know your electrons aren't coming from a company that's using natural gas from fracking right now?
Right, but that's not an imposed choice that I've made on other people.
It's not an imposed,
It's a choice, basically, I'm getting my energy from PSE&G today, because that's the choice that's available to me. And nobody's imposing that choice to me, upon me. It is what it is at this point. What I'm saying is, I can't move forward on any decision to start any process without knowing more about it.
well,
It's just the way I would operate.
I certainly respect that, but if fracking was that important to us, then we could make part of this thing is we want all of our energy from places that don't use fracked gas to, I don't know if that's truly a term, but I just made it one.
What you're suggesting is certainly doable.
Yeah.
You could
But, okay,
build that into the body of the RFP, that's correct.
Nevertheless, I respect your point of view, that you want more education on this.
Mr. Mayor?
Deputy Mayor Regan?
If possible, I'd like to actually defer the decision to talk about the RFP to a council discussion item post the budget process, quite honestly. So not tomorrow's meeting or, the next, but
Thank you.
No, we got room.
but that would give time, I think this was informative, but I myself am not in a position tonight. I would want to make a decision on whether we start kick off the RFP process, and I'd like to have more time just to have another general discussion item about it at a council meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
That's
Okay.
just my thought.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vornlocker, our manager? Township
I
manager?
have one question for Mr. Finger. The very first slide, I believe it was, and also as part of what we have put together for our RFP for consultant, okay, maybe not the first slide, maybe the second slide. It would be the slide that says that a municipality will enact an ordinance.
That's here.
Okay, there you go. The ordinance requirement is pre-RFP for consultant or post-RFP for consultant?
Pre-RFP for consultant.
That's what I thought. So just as a point here, council would have to enact an ordinance allowing me to have an RFP put out for the consultant.
Oh, good.
Okay, so this process tonight and any council discussion would lead to an ordinance being introduced to start the process. That truly is the first part of this process. As far as preparation of an RFP for the consultant, we have done that already. That was done with the there's a boilerplate RFP for a consultant that we have, and we're prepared to do that if the decision of council is to move forward with this program. So I just wanted to clarify that. I know that, I hear the concern in your voices, and I understand the desire to learn more about this process. I have had the luxury of hearing Mr. Finger now twice. I was with Councilman Kramer and got to hear all about energy aggregation in Atlantic City. I've also done a tremendous amount of research about it since then, and certainly understand Councilman Kramer's enthusiasm about this as I read through all of this, but I think that all of you need to do the same. We can certainly get this scheduled in the very near future on a council discussion item, and we can provide more information for you. Mr. Zelenik also worked on this with me to prepare those things, and it's also been through the Public Works Committee. And all the members of the Public Works Committee should have that draft RFP. It was part of an agenda at the last meeting. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed on that part.
Okay, good point that we have to have an ordinance to actually move forward. Okay, so the deputy mayor's suggestion that it be on the agenda after the budget is passed, were you saying, supposed to introduce? Councilman Cruz?
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, okay, so, Ms. Woodbury, if it can, you be our memory that a meeting, hopefully after our budget is introduced, well, passed, then we'll visit this. Okay, Mr. Finger, thank you for your time here.
My pleasure.
A long way from home, so for you, appreciate it.
If the need arises down the road, I'm happy to avail myself if you'd like me to come up again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good then.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate it. So we are now at item number 5B, which is the last item on our agenda before adjournment. That's our 2014 capital budget. Over the last few weeks, we've had meetings for the council on budgets of various departments, and this may be the last piece before we introduce it. So, Mr. Bornlock, you want a few moments so you can settle in? Oh, yes. Okay, we're going to be looking at capital budget, which is tab 4. That's one. That's where we are. Okay, yeah. Capital budget, tab 4. Many of these items were discussed and/or alluded to during our departmental budget processes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
As the mayor stated, the capital budget is located under tab 4. It includes the municipal capital budget as well as the water utility capital budget. Just prior to us starting, well, maybe we'll set the sub-agenda to the agenda here. My hope is here that we can work our way through the municipal capital budget, the municipal capital 5-year plan, the water capital budget, and then hopefully sum up and make some decisions as to some choices that council has as it relates to some positions that were proposed through the budget review process, and then hopefully sum up the entire budget review process so that we can move forward in preparation for an introduction at the April 8th meeting. So that's my hope here, that we can move through all of those things tonight and get this process completed tonight so that we can introduce on the 8th. Okay. So I'm going to probably share this microphone a lot with Mr. Zelenik to my right, but on page C1 is the CY 2014 current fund capital requests. On the left column is the general capital, vehicles, and technology, and then the suggested method of financing for each of those proposed capital projects for 2014. The thought process this year with funding of capital projects is those projects that were recurring projects, generally, other than the first two, which are road resurfacing and sidewalk improvements. All the other recurring capital projects would be funded through cash capital, and any one-time capital projects would be funded through bonding. So that should be reflected, as you see in the suggested method of financing. And that was a rather lengthy discussion at the Financial Oversight Committee meetings on this year's preparation for the budget process. So we might as well start with the top of the list, which is road resurfacing. Road resurfacing is proposed for this year at $2.5 million, and it is proposed to be bonded. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Tom, who handles that particular process more so than me.
What we had done within the engineering department last summer was we did an overall road survey, which went well above and beyond what we've done in the past when we did our road surveys. We had multiple people going out, looking at the roads and looking at a variety of different features on the roads and defects on the roads and things like that, and we rated everything. And based on that, we're looking at, $2.5 million again this year. And if you look at the 5-year plan on the next page, for the next 3 years after this, to get us up to speed where we can start scaling back our resurfacing, eventually getting down to about $1 million a year for an ongoing thing, so.
I don't see $1 million a year.
I said eventually getting down. You're not going to go from 2.5 right down to 1. You're going to scale it back every year.
But I'm looking at 2016, 17, 18, 19.
Right, and then
Is that the
19 we start
projection?
dropping down. And all this may change as we're going forward, but this is just looking at a snapshot today, what we think the degradation of the roads is going to be over the next couple of years and going. We can't predict the future, but we're doing our best based on this survey.
Okay.
There was a 10-year period where we did nothing.
Oh, there was a 10-year period before I started where nothing was done, and even when I was here, there was a 2-year period where we did nothing.
Yeah.
So
It was never nothing, it was less than.
it was nothing.
It
It was
sank as
nothing.
low as 600,000, as I'm recalling.
I remember, I want to say 5 years ago, it was, the only work we did was what we had through a state grant, which was $150,000. So we had one project for $150,000.
Okay, that's,
Other than, right,
Yeah.
I'm talking about capital construction, not road maintenance, which would be potholes and stuff. Yes.
Mayor,
you could be correct, my memory doesn't,
I just want to remind you, there were ladies here from Cusset Street who
okay.
came and left pieces of tarmac on our desk here.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized we got to do something and have a program and never get behind the 8 ball again.
So far this year, the winter was bad and the winter beat the roads up really bad. There were a lot of potholes. We spent about $34,000 so far this year in manpower and material just patching potholes. The positive of that $34,000 is none of that was spent on any roads that were resurfaced within the past 5 years.
Yep. It's a good deal.
Okay. Any,
So,
okay, anything on the roads?
Well,
Councilman Kramer?
that's been a bone of contention for years in the past, so I did prepare something about this. Councilman Prasad was complaining that I hadn't had a PowerPoint in a while. So, and I had worked with, DPW on this. It was actually, what I had done is discovered that we have no record of what roads we paved when. And our last road survey was several years old and was not done anywhere near to the level it was done. So through the manager, I was prompting for this road survey, and they did it in a manner exceeding my expectations. They did really a super job on it. But quickly, I'll take you through what I learned from their survey. So the town's road system is divided up into 731 road segments. So like, for instance, Canal Road, I think, has 5 segments. All segments are not equal. Roads are wider. Some roads are wider, some roads are narrower, but nevertheless, there's 431 segments. And then they rated the roads from from A through F. There's 305 roads from A minus to A plus, 241 roads from B minus to B plus, 154 road segments, from C minus to C plus, 16 Ds and 13 Fs. Grading, though, is not like school. So where, you might say, okay, I got a C, not so bad, that's average. Well, C minus, Ds, and Fs, and this is all Public Works, not me, said that those are roads that need to be paved right now, today. There's $3.5 million worth of those roads. Then there are type roads, type C, or grade C, needs paving within 1 year. There's $4.5 roughly million of those roads. And then there are roads that within 2 to 4 years are going to need paving. Those are the C plus roads. And there's $4.25 million of those. That adds up to about $12 million of roads. So in a pie chart, if you look at road paving needs, 76% of our roads are in good shape. We're not looking at needing paving for at least 5 years. But right now, 6% of our roads need paving. In a year, another 9% will need paving. And in 2 to 4 years, another 9% will need paving. I tried to come up with a graphical way of looking at that. If you can see, there's 4 groups here. These are the ones that need paving now. These are the ones that need paving in a year. Whoops. The next are roads that need paving in 2 to 4 years. And then these are all those roads that are doing really well and don't need paving for a while. The yellow lines are roads that we had to patch since January. The orange ones we had to patch twice, and there's even a red one, which is hard to see, it's over here, had to be patched 3 times. As you can see, 40% of the ones that needed to be patched are in the need paving now, 34% in next year's, 18% in the 2 years, and only 2% of the roads that need paving are in all of these roads. Patching, thank you, pothole patching. So this graphically shows the difference here, 40% now, 34% in a year. This is where we patched. So this basically tells you their grading system is pretty good. That the roads that he's saying, and he did all this beforehand, said these are roads that need paving now. Those are the roads that turn out to be the ones that have the greatest number of potholes. Another way of looking at that is the roads that need paving now are 17 times more likely to need patching than the ones that are in the long-term group. And finally, just a comparison, these are the roads, this is the long-term group. Most of our roads are in the long-term group, and only 20% of them had patching, but 7% of the patching that was done was in 6% of our roads. So that's just a way to compare them. So $12 million at $2.5 million a year would take 4.8 years, and that's probably not how he did it, but that basically works out to the same thing with the predictions of coming out with 4 years of 2.5 and then a 2.1 million. Remember, now we've gone 5 years, and we're probably beginning to get into some of those roads that I've termed as long-term. So then it becomes a budget consideration as to how much to spend. And this, Mr. Hodgelick helped me with this, if there was, say we were going to do $1 million worth of roads, then we have to do what I call a down payment, but we basically have to, when we get a bond, we have to put down $50,000 on $1 million, 5%. And it would take us 12 years to do that, paving them that way. If we do it $2.5 million a year, that would be $125 we'd have to put down. So that's real dollars that we would be spending each year, or at least in the first year, for the bond, and we would do that for 5 years. If you take, so what is the bottom line that we all care about is how did it affect the average person? So with an average home value of $306,000, how much will that increase taxes? If we bond for $1 million, or do the down payment for bonding for $1 million, that would raise taxes $1.71 on the average home. And if we did the 2.5 million version, that's $4.27 to the average home, with a difference being of $2.56 difference between the two. So if an average road is 20 years, there are roads that last 40 years, there's roads that last 10 years. If average road is 20 years, and a quarter of our roads need paving within the next 5 years, 25% of 20 years is 5 years, so that's a reasonable plan. To take 12 years to do it, that's 60% of our average road life. So to pave a quarter of our roads in 60% of our average road life is a questionable practice. Mr. Zelnick has assured me several times we will get down to the $1 million level, but I do have to wonder if we have $40 million worth. If we were to pave every road right now, it's $41 million. If the average road life is 20 years, that seems to me like what we should be spending every year on average is going to be around $2 million. And we've had this discussion and he's disagreed with me, but and he keeps promising eventually we'll get down to $1 million, and I certainly hope that. But I do have to wonder if we can ever really get that low. Otherwise, we will be constantly getting behind. We've already decided in our water system that we're going to be doing, it's a 50-year water system, we're going to try to replace 2% or 1% a year. So, it's a 100-year water system, right? So replacing 1% a year makes sense. I argue that we need to adopt a similar issue with our road paving. So $34,000, most of that, 3/4 of that was spent on this 1 quarter of roads. So if we don't do that paving, then we're still spending money anyway. What did you say, not a single road in the last 5 years? Correct. So, right, so, and that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
And-
Okay, I'll make,
I just have
Ready.
one other thing to add to Councilman Kramer's presentation that he didn't hit on, that deals with the cost of repaving these roads, and that is that there's an additional cost to going beyond the F. The additional cost is that when you pave a road, when you need it, you overlay that road, and you don't have the base of that road destroyed by neglect beyond its life expectancy. So the cost increases for paving roads the longer you wait to pave it, once it's reached that point that it's at, and in this particular exercise, an F. Yeah, there is nothing below an F, but we all know that roads get beyond an F. So that's where the cost really begins to escalate, and it goes beyond just the normal overlay.
You drive in Edison Township or Sayreville, I've driven roads that are beyond F.
Cusset Street was beyond F.
Councilman Chase?
We generally get a state grant for some repaving, so is that subtracted from the 2.5 million, or is that something over and above the 2.5 million?
That's something over and above, that's not accounted for in that 2.5 million number. We generally get anywhere between 150 and 200,000 from the state every year for
But
a particular road.
But that would take care of some of the roads that we would otherwise be spending our bond money on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we do DMART from the state, or?
We did DEMA, JFK just this past year.
Right.
That section we did, and we got another grant for the next section of JFK for this year.
And I think in the past, Franklin Boulevard, I think Councilman Wright.
That's
County.
Yeah.
Trying to think, Blackswell's Mill Road, we'd gotten, couple sections of New Brunswick Road, DeMont Lane, a couple sections were all state grant.
Right.
I also think we should be looking into giving Veronica to the county. They have said that is a road, the style of that road is acceptable for them to take, and it's approaching paving, and they're probably not stupid. They might make us pave it before they take it, but I still think we should try to get it off our books.
Okay, here's, and I appreciate your analysis in doing all this on the roads, and I don't doubt that they need to be done. And you should be watching out for our roads and our public works and our plowing and all that. And, pardon me, I feel I have to be watching out for those things, and I have the also added responsibility of looking out for my taxpayers' dollars and what they spend. And under the projections that have been shown to us, but if in 2020 we did go to 1 million, which I mean, not based on your things, but I can't hang my hat on something so long in the future. We're supposed to get rid of sales tax after a few years, and the tolls on the parkway once the roads were paid. So by that point, according to projections, we're going to have run out of money anyway in the town, just our financial projections. So I want the roads done, and I think it's a good idea, and I think this is reasonable. I also want more police protection. I also want more welfare for people. I also want more staff so people don't have to wait, and I also want more public work so it eases the burden on your people. But to me, I don't know that I can always afford it, me looking out at my taxpayers. So I don't disagree with anything you say, so don't take that the wrong way. If we did have low paving in the past few years, I don't have people dying in the streets, so it may have not been good, but can do it. I've got to cut the budget back. This year, again, this is me from my perspective, we're spending more than we're taking in. That's obviously a formula for disaster. We're making great strides in town, but to me, this is one area where I'd consider pulling back. And the down payment isn't so much, but year after year after year, like anything else, it adds up in someone's budget. Just for the council to know, this wasn't discussed in financial oversight, so we're all kind of seeing it for the first time here. I have no greater insight than anyone else here, because this is the first time. Except, like all of us, I saw 2.5 million, but I didn't get any items. So, will I propose pulling this back? I may not. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. But, so Mr. Zelnick, don't take it wrong. You're the watchdog of all this stuff, and you should.
My job is to advise.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing more.
Then that's all. And again, I don't disagree. I would like to do it in my mind if, like this, like a lot of areas, looking out for my taxpayer's pocketbook. And that's where I'm coming from. It's you may call it simplistic after all the intense analysis, which is very good analysis to just do that, but that's where I'm coming from.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Prasad.
Yeah, we've got to pay the piper someday, you know. You can't keep deferring and kicking the can down the road, which is what was done prior to my coming on council before 2006. And that was that we ignored the roads, especially in the 4th and 5th Ward. And, you know, that's when we had the people coming and giving us pieces of tarmac here. So, you know, it's something that sooner or later we have to address. And this is how we're trying to correct it. And it's a responsibility that we should be able to provide good infrastructure for our people, especially if somebody's car breaks down or their shocks go, and all that was happening with our roads. And especially, you know, it doesn't happen in the more affluent areas of town, but they do happen in the, you know, the 4th and 5th Ward, which is much more heavily used and is much more population dense. So, you know, I live in the 5th Ward, so I can speak for myself that I got tired of seeing bumps and you know, potholes all over the place. So it was time to do something about it, and we have a responsibility. And that's the same thing with safe water. So both have to be addressed, and we have to have a long-term plan, something that we shouldn't be compromising on, because this is part of our infrastructure. It affects our property values, everything. So we may agree to disagree on it, Mr. Mayor. You can be the accountant and the watchdog of the purse strings, but also we can, you know, look at it from a long-term, overall beneficial perspective of all the township and township residents. So just a difference of opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Thank you. There was an editorial this week, Paul Mulshine, who's not considered a raging liberal, rather conservative writer, spoke about the gas tax that's being proposed, the gasoline tax. And he quoted a woman, and I didn't commit to memory what organization she represented, but he agreed with her in his article, that the average driver in the state of New Jersey pays $600 to have their car repaired as a result of potholes, other breakdowns on the roads. It would cost the average New Jersey driver $54, an extra gasoline tax, in order to fix those roads. So who is taking care of the resident, the person who's fixing the roads, or the person who is proposing perhaps a false economy? And I think that was his point of view. I might even be able to find that article if you'd like to read it.
Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Reed.
So this is all engaging conversation, but what I would propose is that since there are a number of capital items here, we get through here the discussion about each other, and then we could weigh in individually towards the end of that as to what our opinion about what's to be added or not. Because if we kind of cycle through and everyone comments on each item, you know,
We'll be here all night.
We'll beat the record of, we were here the one until 11:30, 11:45. And quite honestly, selfishly, I don't want to do that. So I'd rather, let's talk about the items and then have the discussion about adds and omits or reductions towards the
Okay.
end.
All right. Okay, that's fine. I just want to state, because I think this has been implied, I am not being penny wise and pound foolish. Everyone in the state is not paying $600 to get their shock absorbers fixed and completed. Believe me, I've done extremely much financial analysis in my life. I'm not naive as to how numbers and dollars and finances work. Just making that point.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And then we will move on to item number C4 as it's listed. It says BOE sidewalk improvements. As you all should be aware at this point, there was a project undertaken, I guess at the urging of Councilman Wright down at the end there, to look at our sidewalks specifically in the 4th and 5th Ward as it related to those areas around the Franklin Middle School. The goal here to increase the number of sidewalks specifically in the 4th and 5th Ward as it surrounds the middle school, to replace, to add sections of sidewalk where they're missing, put sidewalks on streets that don't have them. This would be a multi-year project. If you refer to your page C2, you'll see that the $750,000 is run out through the 5-year capital plan. This is would be a multi-million-dollar project. There has been some discussion recently, I will tell you that, in an attempt to schedule a meeting with the Board of Education, a subcommittee that exists, the joint committee between our council and the Board of Education. We are still attempting to schedule that to see if the Board of Education is still supportive of this. There is a sidewalk master plan that was prepared by our township planner, Mark Healy. That includes this as well as sidewalks throughout the township that are needed in areas that have pedestrian generators or receivers. I have included this $750,000 in the capital plan for this year and for our fiscal calendar year, I should say, 2014 capital requests. However, at this particular point, I am somewhat hesitant to push too hard on this, other than to say that if it's allowed to be included, there is no obligation to fund. This is simply something that if we were, we've done this in the past where initially there was a need for a capital improvement, and because of changing circumstances, the entire project or the project as a whole was not funded for that particular year and was allowed to kind of drift away. I don't know where this is going to go, to be perfectly honest. And so while I say that it is a very important project, if the support is there from the entity that stands to benefit the most, the Board of Education, with the reduction in busing, which would obviously have an impact on the taxpayers overall because it would hopefully show in the school budget. I don't know where we're at right now with them.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on that point, so
Councilman Prasad.
just on the one point you made about we don't, if we include it in the budget, we don't necessarily have to fund it. But if we include it in the budget, it's part of the tax.
No. Well, the only portion that this is proposed to be bonded, all right, and it shows a $37,500 5% down pay. That is the only portion of the $750,000 that's included as an appropriation in the calendar year budget. The balance of the cost would be bonded and would be then incurred debt. But the actual appropriation is for the 5% down pay.
Okay.
So it's the $37,500. Now, I will tell you that $37,500 goes into the capital improvement fund, which then could be used to fund other projects as part of cash capital, or to be used for down pay on a future bond of another that project or a different project.
Okay. As far as the Board of Ed, they must have a lot of money because they just paid their interim guy at $682 a day, so they've got more money than we do, the highest in the state. Did they, have they committed to doing courtesy busing yet?
No, that was my understanding. It was, and I have attempted to schedule a meeting with. I know you know the answer, and so do I. My understanding is that was the point of us having this meeting with the joint committee, so that the discussion could be had as to whether or not the board would commit to courtesy busing if we committed to building these sidewalks.
Right.
So the answer is no, they have not at this point.
And we've been attempting to have that meeting with the Board of Ed for roughly a year.
In May of 2012. Was to believe the first time I tried to schedule that meeting.
So that just tells me it's not important to them. Like if it was important to them to do this, then they would make time for it. But given that they haven't, my perception, in my opinion, is it's not important to them. And if that's teeing up to that, this won't be on my list of things I will be supporting, that would probably be a good read.
And I'm just going to piggyback one quick question.
Sure.
With that meeting. It was almost scheduled, and then they canceled on you?
Yes, correct.
Okay, recently. Okay.
Very recently.
Councilman Prasad, Councilman Chase, and Councilman Wright.
Yeah, as I recall, Councilman Kramer actually got the BOE to do a matrix economizing study, and part of those recommendations were that there are sidewalks be built and that the substantial savings would accrue to the taxpayers because of that. And the BOE was not willing to fund it. And so we said, okay, it still trickles down to a lower rate for everybody, so we'll look into ways of funding it. And as a result, this whole conversation started. And we should be holding BOE accountable for the immense amount of money that was spent on consultants and their recommendation on where economies could be made. And one of the things, the first thing on the agenda was these sidewalks, and they were listed. So that's how it came about, and that's why we pushed for it. And there's overall savings for the residents, and that's why we're pushing still. But somehow we've got to, engage the BOE to do so and come up with the wherewithal to get this thing done. Of course, if they drag their feet and refuse to do anything about it, then, it goes into other projects, down payments or whatever. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Chase?
It was my understanding that a list of streets where they could save on busing if we built sidewalks, that such a list had been generated.
That's correct.
So we should be able to go ahead.
Well, I think, Councilman, the question here is, while the list was generated, and I personally certainly participated in the creation of that list, so I'm very familiar with the locations where it was discussed there was a need for sidewalks. There hasn't been a commitment from the Board of Education at this point to actually use those sidewalks and put children on their feet and out of school buses. That's really what the need here is to move forward, is a commitment from the Board of Education, and that's been my attempt to schedule this meeting, is so that we can get a commitment from them, at least a verbal commitment, that they'll reduce the number of students in school buses, which will then subsequently reduce the cost of transportation to the Board of Education, and in hopes of, while it might result in an increase in our costs, there'd be a resultant decrease in theirs.
Okay, Councilman, you done?
Right.
Well, just another thing that I remember when council was discussing the pilot for RPM, the Voorhees Station Apartments, Councilman Kramer finally said, well, I'll vote for it if we use the money to build the sidewalks to save money for the Board of Ed. And I don't know how much money we get from that pilot, but that's something that could be balanced against this 750,000, or certainly against the 37,500 down payment, but we really should be thinking about its effect on the bonds, the bond payments. But people have told me that the Board of Education, it would be hard to get a majority in favor of the proposition that the sun rises in the east. And so maybe this is an example of. But the question is, do we wait for the Board of Education to get its act together, which it shows no sign of doing, or do we go ahead and at least start on this project?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay,
In the spirit of what the deputy mayor said earlier, I think we should just continue to move on, as opposed to having a lot more editorial comments on this particular item about the Board of Education.
Except the deputy mayor took a bite of the apple.
Yeah, so that was enough.
A two-sentence.
That was enough.
In and out.
Okay, in
Yeah,
fairness, Councilman Wright and Kramer want to,
So do we all have to have a bite?
I'm sorry?
We can have a bite at
Like
the
a good
end.
apple.
Oh, no, I'm not going to take a bite on that particular apple. I'm going to take a bite that half a dozen in one hand, half a dozen in the other hand. The Board of Ed could pay for the road, and I'm still going to pay for it. Or the township going to build the road, and I'm still going to pay for it. So it doesn't matter who builds the damn sidewalk, as long as the sidewalk gets done. Now, we all walk up and down the streets. Everyone walks on the street. Where's the sidewalk at? We talk about, well, we're worrying about, I don't want the Board of Education to have courtesy busing. Well, damn, I ain't worried about the courtesy busing. We can go with that down the road. What we have here is a situation where our kids are walking on the street. No way around it. I don't care how we slice it. We have to get the kids off the street and on the sidewalks. Now, I can just use Hillcrest School for an example. When they walk up Franklin Boulevard, sometimes they're on the street, sometimes they're on the sidewalk. It depends on which side you're walking on, whether or not you have a sidewalk or not. You can walk down Hamilton Street. Sometimes you got a sidewalk, sometimes you're walking in the street. Sometimes you have a curve, sometimes you don't. Now, I just got a curve. You know how come I got a curve? Because right across my street, RPM built the building, and they had to give me a curb. How about that? They even moved me back 2 feet because I was 2 feet over my line, a property line. So let's get down to the basics here. I'm very upset and I'm agitated that we are going to, well, the Board of Education doesn't seem like they care about it, so why should we? That's bullcrap. We care about the people in this town. And for the amount of money we're going to spend this year, next year, and the year after that to make sure our kids, my kids, walk to school on the curb. And if I walk down the street, I want to walk on the curb. I want to walk on the sidewalk. I want to do something, and it just doesn't make sense for us not to have the sidewalk. Now, I could run my mouth all night long.
okay, good.
Yep. I got the mic.
Go
I got
ahead.
the mic. We're debating something that's stupid. It's stupid. The Board of Education is going to do it's going to cost me $750, $250. Doesn't matter. If we do, it's the same damn thing. So when are we going to get off the pile and actually do the damn thing? I screamed about Berry Street because we had all these kids walking around the bad curb, and to get them off the street, I think the township manager, did we get a grant for that, or?
We used the CDBG grant.
Right. So now we got sidewalks coming, right, Mr. Zelnick? Yes, sir. Okay, so now let's look at something else. If I can get it for my, piece of town, community block grant, we may not get one for every other, part of town, but damn, let's pay for it. Let's not wait for the Board of Education, because we have the list, don't we? Mark Healy, our township planner, came up with a list, did he not?
He did.
Okay, let's implement the list. Let's not wait till next year. Let's not wait till we have this phantom meeting with the Board of Education, because if we've been scheduling that meeting since 2012, here's that bite at the apple, as dysfunctional as they can be, my bite, that's all I'm going to say, we need to get it together. We are the Township Council of Franklin. Let's do something worthwhile with the roads and the streets and the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Are, going on, did you?
Shall we move on?
I'll have apple pie later.
You'll have apple pie later? Great. That sounds fantastic, Councilman. So that means we can move on to municipal building. And I think that I'm going to pick
Should
up
move
the pace
quickly.
here a little bit.
They should move quickly from here.
Because what I will say is, if you recall back to individual department head presentations, from this point on, all of these matters have been discussed at department head level budget presentations. The server room backup air conditioner and the server room temperature monitoring system is something that Mr. Hyman spoke about. The need, we had several incidents over the past year of overheating in our server room. We stand to lose a great deal more than the total of, I guess, $22,000 if we were to not do this project. The roof repair on the code building and the carpet replacement on the code building, once again, I refer you back to the surplus of fee monies for construction code, and I don't know that we should necessarily belabor that much more than what I just did.
Right.
Those are necessary repairs. The public safety building carpet is now 23 years old and is a trip hazard in a number of places. It's the original carpet to the public safety building and is certainly desperately in need of replacement and has been put off the two prior budget years as a capital improvement, and I think it's long overdue. Likewise, 1986 is the vinyl flooring for the Public Works building at 40 Churchill Avenue. It has not been replaced since the building was built. There are tiles that have popped up down to the concrete slab underneath. It is not only a tripping hazard, it was identified by our joint insurance fund as a hazard and needs to be replaced. I'm going to I'll skip over the emergency safety equipment for vehicles under police. The defibrillators are part of a replacement of existing defibrillators so that we have those very vital pieces of equipment in all of our police cars when they go out on patrol. And then we get to the public works section. The new salt storage facility at $300,000. I realize that that's a significant number, and it may seem timely given the winter that we've just gone through and our lack of salt through most of it. That lack of salt, which certainly could have been, we could have been in a better position, but I don't want to mislead you, that this salt dome, this salt facility that is proposed is not one that would have kept us in great supply during this winter. We were not in great supply because our suppliers could not supply it. What this is a replacement for an older salt dome that is in need of replacement, is in need of great repair, and this would be of suitable size for a municipality our size if we were to build it. Not to complicate matters, but this is also we need to put this in a location other than where our current one is, just based on the fact that this one would be larger, and that's would be where the current Board of Education transportation trailer is at 40 Churchill.
And I made them aware at their last meeting.
I thought you might attend their meeting and tell them that. But this is something that if you have questions, I'll stop here on this particular item because it is a significant dollar amount, and Mr. Zillina can answer any questions. It has gone through the Public Works Committee as well as having been discussed at the Financial Oversight Committee as we prepared for the budget. But if anyone has any questions.
So sorry.
I have a question for Councilman Kramer. So they're aware and they have bought into the change in location?
No, they're just
aware.
They're aware, and I stated it in such a way as it's going to happen, and we'd be happy to help them with relocation in some way, helping, using our vehicles to prepare surfaces or something like that. That's what the manager had discussed, and that's what we discussed. But I also made it clear to them that I'm not the decider, so, that's just where we're going and why the importance of the meeting. But are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
On the salt dome.
Yes.
So we did discuss it in Public Works, and we use 450 tons to fully salt the town. We currently have a 700-ton salt dome. We're proposing a 1,500-ton salt dome, which would roughly do 3 saltings, but I happened to learn, it didn't come up in the meeting, I happened to have learned it from the Franklin Reporter, that, that we use about 2,400 tons of salt a year. So there would be some thought of doing a 2,400-ton salt dome. One, would we have room for it? And two, how much more would that be? I realize I'm catching you on the spot here.
Would we have room for it? It's going to get tighter.
Okay,
Cost-wise, you're not talking double the cost,
but a lot.
probably 450,
Okay, so it's a lot.
and
All
that's
right.
being pulled out of the air. that number.
Okay, but it's not just another 50,000, it's
No,
it's a fair.
no, it's not just
Okay,
another 50,000.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Regan.
Just on the topic of, because I did hear that Councilman Kramer informed them, but I thought there was a more formal notice that went out from you saying
There was,
about the salt and called, like, besides the conversation Phil had at a BOE meeting, there's been others, right?
well, I have informed the board secretary and assistant superintendent that we desire this, but this was, he was informed as a request for an agenda item for a joint meeting. So that is the method by which he was informed.
Okay. All right, I'll leave it to the Public Works Committee to decide if something more formal should go out. That was it. I'm all right with the salt facility.
Okay.
If nothing else, you can keep on going.
Keep on going? Okay, keep on going. Canal Road guide rail replacement. This is an ongoing project to replace sections of the guide rail that was installed back in the early 2000s.
In front of my house.
As part of a grant, Councilman. This was funded through a grant from the Department of Transportation initially, and so now these sections of the guide rail that need to be replaced are being replaced annually at a cost of $20,000 per year. This will be a multi-year project. If you look at your 5-year plan, I believe that it is 20,000 in 15, 16, 17, and then scaling back to 15 in 18 and 10 in 19. But we'll be like other infrastructure throughout the town, an ongoing repair project. Hopefully, we don't have to continue to repair it. I believe there's some changes made to the repairs, correct, Mr. Zolnick?
Yes.
Okay, one thing, and the consequences of not doing it are,
Someone will be able to drive into the canal.
okay.
No longer be effective.
It would
You
not
say
be
that like-
effective should someone hit it, which would be the reason why we put it there.
Okay.
You say they'll drive into canal like it's a bad thing.
Well, as a former traffic
Can you-
officer, I would definitely categorize that as a bad thing, having witnessed it on several occasions
Okay,
through
now
my
I'm clear.
career.
He doesn't want you to change your words,
Would
just a
pollute the
reflection.
water
Yeah.
supply.
All
Okay.
right, moving along.
Tire balancer, stump grinder, and chipper are all pieces of equipment in Public Works that are in need of replacement. These are replacement items for equipment that has reached its useful age, and these were also, all three were deferred from the previous year's capital budget to this year's budget. And then in recreation, again from last year, $15,000 for an improvement that is much needed if you've spent any time in the senior center, and that's a replacement of the sound system, which is in need of replacement, and also replacement of the reading room carpet, which, again, that building constructed in 1996 has now become a tripping hazard and is in need of replacement. Vehicles, the construction department has requested 3 Ford Explorers. Those Ford Explorers, again, going back to the collection of fees and the need to spend the amount of money collected by the self-sustaining Uniform Construction Code Office. Fire prevention increased their staff by 1 fire prevention officer last year as council increased their staffing, approved the increase in staffing by 1 inspector, and this is a request for a vehicle that will now provide response vehicles for all of our fire inspectors when they're at work. The police department, as you recall, had requested 1 sedan and 5 SUVs and a pickup truck, referring back up to the emergency safety equipment for vehicles. It is the combination of those vehicles along with the cost of the emergency and safety equipment for those vehicles that's the total capital expenditure for the police department fleet. I believe the chief of police went over the need for these vehicles in a pretty thorough manner. Moving on to the technology section. Again, Mr. Hyman was here and went through his entire capital requests for 2014. The $45,000 is the annual replacement program for all of our computers and printers on our network. Networking equipment for $20,000. The mobile radio for vehicle and portable radio for the fire inspector from the fire prevention office, again referring back to what I had said just a few moments ago as far as their staffing. The police department's ongoing project of the mobile computer replacement. I believe they're on a 5-year plan for those mobile PCs, which is about average for computer. The police vehicle radios are for the outfitting of the 7 vehicles, and the 1 extra radio is, these radios have now, many of the radios in the police vehicles have reached their useful life, and there's a replacement for those radios as well. That's why the extra one. The live scan was the fingerprinting, if you recall, where there's a need to now do palm prints, according to the FBI, for sex offenders, and so that is a mandated project. And then, if you recall, Carol Langone came in and talked about the folding of our tax bills and the need for the new folding machine. Clearly, much more economical to spend the $13,000 on a folding machine than to have an entire tax collector staff spend a week folding and stuffing envelopes. And that is the current fund capital requests. Again, going to page C2, I don't know that there's several projects here that are currently listed for the 2015 calendar year plan. Obviously, things change, and this is a rather fluid plan that changes from year to year. Some of them static, such as the road resurfacing that has shown up on each year as we've moved forward, and then some that are one-time requests that would come next year. So I don't know if there's any questions about the 5-year plan. I guess if there are, I'd be certainly willing to answer them, or Mr. Zillinan could answer them. But if not, I don't know that we need to belabor it if you have no questions about it.
Any questions? Councilman Chase.
Just something in the technology portion there. I thought we concluded that the printer replacement program, because that's an ongoing process, that really should be cash, whereas the police Panasonic Toughbook police mobile computers and radios, that those were things that should be bonded for. So just be sure.
The Toughbooks are a recurring expense, so therefore it should be cash. I may have an old cap. There was a replacement to this capital budget sheet, Councilman, that you should have received from Ms. Moody, and those corrections were made. The 8 Motorola police vehicle radios were part of the bonding process. The $45,500 for the Toughbooks was cash, and likewise, the computer and printing replacement program and the network equipment should be moved to cash. I believe does that reflect your comment, Councilman? Moving the recurring costs for IT, computer and printer replacement program and network equipment over to the cash column?
Yeah.
That's correct. That should be on
That
an
would
updated version.
Increase the cash, so I was hoping that we would bond for the computers.
And, well,
Balance
we
it
will
out.
bond for the police vehicle radios, though, so that 53,000 moves
Oh,
over.
we bond for
Yeah,
that.
the radios, because those are a one-time expense. That's not an annual expense.
Okay, so those things will balance
That's
out.
correct.
Yeah.
And if you see where the mobile radios for vehicles under fire prevention and the portable radio are under the bonding category, not the cash category, the police radios would be the same. Okay, five-year plan question? Yeah, or others?
Just,
Yeah, Councilman Prasad?
do you have uninterrupted power sources for the server room?
Yes.
Because if we have a meltdown, that could be catastrophic.
We do. There are uninterrupted UPSs in all of our server rooms, in police server room, police radio room, and the township server room, yes.
Okay, other questions? Okay, Councilwoman Francois.
So did we go over the debt service for this 5-year plan?
Did we go over
For our
the debt?
capital,
For this year's, our debt service is in the general budget. I mean, did we go?
where is it? Just refer me to where it is.
Towards the end of the current fund section.
It's actually probably the easiest way, Councilwoman, is to look at, in the very beginning, where you have the costs related to, it's the ones with the colors, the blue and the green, in the very beginning, under the first tab. I believe debt service is listed there, correct?
Yes, or it starts on page 485.
On what's listed as page C, Councilwoman? That one right there, about mid-page.
The page
Debt
before
service bond,
tab one.
C, okay.
right. On page C, it says debt service, and that's the debt service for the 2013 versus 2014 budgets. You'll see that our debt service is down in 2014 versus 2013.
And do we
that-
have this similar projection for?
Well, obviously, there's, see, no, because, and I'll tell you that this is, so, kind of a quick overview on our debt service.
Depends on
we-
what we go out for.
Well, exactly. Right now, we've incurred, most of our bonded debt over the last couple of years has been, we have not bonded for that bonded debt yet. We anticipate selling bonds this year. We've had some conversations as recently as today with our bond attorney, and in an attempt, we were in the process, and we've actually pulled back right now because of rates with the rebonding of
So this is
the-
what we
the
currently
debt.
have.
But that's our current debt,
Okay.
and that's our debt service for 2014. And we're looking at about, what, 11 million? About $11 million in bond sales this year for debt that we've already incurred. But without, and I think that your question, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think your question is, what is the projected debt from this capital budget, and without knowing when we sell the bonds and what the rates are and the terms, because it'll be multi-purpose bonds, it's kind of difficult for me to say with any certainty whatsoever what that debt will be.
Andy, you want to say something?
This might be helpful. Perhaps I had mentioned at the last meeting about your debt percentage and how low it is. So when you speak about authorizing debt, that's when that gets into that calculation. So, for example, if you look at your capital budget for the year, the debt authorized, if you go forward with this plan, is roughly just somewhere underneath the $4 million. And so in your 14 budget, you have principal debt being paid off of $3.9 million. So roughly, you're keeping your debt percentage at about the same level. Now, you're going to have fluctuations because of when you go to the market, so you're going to have increase in debt service in some years versus other years. But at least you're sort of maintaining your level percentage in terms of your debt versus your equalized valuation, which is a good method to keep track of where you're headed in terms of your debt levels.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So if I can piggyback on that, that means our payment for principal and interest, is that 4.47 million?
Our principal is 4.47, 4.46 principal and interest, 4.450.
Okay, there it is in that column. And if we refinance that debt, would that go up then, because we have more debt, that payment? You said if we went to the market for 11 million?
Well, no, actually. At this point in time, you're contemplating going to the market this year to finance, past projects about $11 million. So certainly at that point, your debt service payments will be going up in subsequent years.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay.
Okay?
Others? Good point.
All right, thank you.
Good, okay. And if we're done, then what I'd ask you to do is move to page C23. C23, which is under tab 4, and C23 is the capital, the water utility, CY 2014 capital requests. There are 4 capital projects that are proposed for bonding in the water utility, and 3 capital projects that are proposed as cash capital projects. This again adhering to the theory of bond for one-time, cash for ongoing projects. You can see that the cash is the annual valve replacement, the annual hydrant replacement, and the automated meter reading meters and transmitters, all of which are ongoing and will continue. If you look at page C24 as ongoing projects in the 5-year capital plan. We've had numerous presentations by our water utility to council. All of these things are things that were discussed in those meetings, either in committee, admin and financial oversight, and public works all got a bite of that one, and it was also a part of the council as a whole, a council discussion item. This is part of our 5-year plan to get our water utility back on track and implement a lot of the things that our water engineer has recommended. Councilman Kramer mentioned earlier, the general life expectancy of a water main is 100 years. Therefore, you replace 1% of your water mains annually, and you keep up with your maintenance on valves, which you see as part of the annual valve replacement. This SCADA replacement is a part of that remote monitoring and system that will also, with the new system, will allow us to better control the amount of water we take from our various suppliers, and so therefore become a much more economical purchaser of water from our suppliers. The hydraulic modeling is a one-time expense that will allow us to make better choices as to how we have the water, where we purchase water from and how we meet the demands of our customers based on the configuration of our system. And the south end tank exterior coating is just that. It's in need of a paint job. It just is as simple as that. To maintain these large structures, we have to paint them every once in a while, and this one is in need of a paint job.
That's the one in the woods?
That's the one in the woods. But obviously, the biggest project here is the $3.5 million for the Route 27 water main replacement. That was a project that council as a whole has already authorized through the beginning stages of engineering that. We heard from Mr. Zelenik at the last meeting that we had here on budget that that project is anticipated to be complete for the engineering work in June, which means hopefully by fall we can begin to start the actual work on the replacement of that water main, which clearly at this point we have spoken a lot about,
Yes,
and
we
I
have.
don't need to know, I don't think we need to speak any more about it here unless I see Councilman Chase might want to say something.
He should be happy.
He should be happy.
Just a quick question.
I'm happy.
Is it actually PVC, or they don't use PVC in water mains?
No, water mains are all
Cast iron.
ductile iron, not
Okay.
ductile.
All right, so that is our capital plan for water. And that is, so that really concludes the capital projects for 2014.
All right.
So before we move on to anything else, which I do have a couple other things that, as I said in the beginning, we need to move on to, is there any other discussion about the capital projects? Is there, we need to move the budget process forward, so if there is discussion that needs to be had among council as to whether or not to include or remove any particular items or adjust dollar figures, I guess now is the time so that I can move this budget forward.
If no one's going to propose a change, it'll come to us in this form.
It will. This is a budget that I presented to you a couple weeks ago, and if there are no changes that, the majority of the body up in front of me proposes and agrees to, then this is the budget that will be introduced. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman
ahead.
Kramer, then Councilman Prasad.
So, I prepared this to help council make a decision. I think I'm going to present it without editorial comment, try to just present the facts here. But, so, a couple, 3-4 years ago, Andy and I sat down and developed a model that predicts where the budget, the main thing to me that it predicts is the end-of-year fund balance. That thing we call surplus sometimes, but a better way to term it is fund balance, and people can think of it as our bank account. And when I took office in 2010, we were going to run out of money. We were going to have no money left to pay our bills, and I think it was May of 2012, and we've done a lot of fixes since then. This is the model that we use to make predictions, and here it's close to current predictions. There's been some, capital things added here and taken off there from this, from the last time this model was updated, but this is pretty close, and it shows with various taxing scenarios where we would wind up, or where the fund balance would wind up, and this is the end-of-year fund balance. So here we are in 2013, and we have roughly $18 million in the fund balance, and depending on what we tax, this is how far we go out. Now, here is if we tax at the maximum amount. So as I've said before, I will editorialize, the 2% tax limit cap is a scam introduced by Trenton. There's no way one can live under that, and there are many, many waivers to it. And Mr. Hodgelick has presented to us, these are the maximum waivers we could take every year. And you get waivers for things beyond your control, such as pension costs, healthcare costs, et cetera. So projecting out, and you can't be sure, but projecting out in 2014 through 18, the maximum we could tax, not saying we should, is roughly 6%, 7%, 6%, 4%, and 4%. Actually, those last two are 3.8 and 3.8. And then, so we'd be great if we were to tax at that rate. as far as the fund balance is concerned. However, it would result in a cumulative tax increase over those years of almost 30%. So, a spreadsheet is one thing, paying to our taxpayers is another. And these numbers at the end here are the amount we would have left in our end-of-year fund balance in 2018. The manager constructed a budget with a 4% tax increase, and so there is the projection at 4%. If we were to do that every year through 2018, our fund balance would be down to about $7 million from $18 million. And the problem is, our bleed rate would be in an increasing rate there from about 9 to 6.9, so a little over $2 million a year we would be bleeding at $7 million, so you can do the math as to where we would run off the cliff. So I just wanted to present this model as something, as a starting point for our discussions and consideration. If we only raise taxes at 2%, then we would run off the cliff in the middle of 2017, and we would end the year, we would end 2018 with a fund balance of minus $3 million. I did one little further analysis, and I looked at the major portions of our budget. The energy costs, wage costs, our debt, liability costs. I took all of those and I put them together as to the percent that they contribute to our budget now. And adding all those up, it's not the whole budget, it's 87%, but so this is trying to answer the question, why are all of these, except for the maximum, on a downslope? Where is the money going? And if you can see, these things that I picked start out at being 87% of our budget and end up at 94% of our budget. So what's going up? What's causing the problem? The biggest one is wages, which go up total of 4% throughout that time. So that where it's taking 44%, it's now, at that time, it'll be taking 47%, so some round-off error, that looks like about 3. But other things like our debt is still planned to be out at 10%. So that's where our money is going, but this is the consequence of the various amounts we raise taxes. Again, all things being equal. We raise taxes 4%, but we cut out $5 million from the budget. Certainly we would be in better shape, but of course we would cut services then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the capital budget? Or changes?
Not on the capital budget. I had a point on the hiring.
Well, and I'm going to start it off, so.
Okay, before we leave the capital budget.
I just, if we're all in agreement on the proposed capital projects for 2014, and the proposed funding, and there's no questions, then we can move past this. If there's issues that need further discussion, I guess now would be the time.
Yeah, here's my issue. I said what I had with the roads. I don't want to belabor it. If no one's on board with me, I'm not going to go into it. You can certainly call me offline if you want to discuss it. Here, we can, but we kind of put out, so I don't want to take up the time. If anyone wants to call me, we can. It just feels a little rich for my blood. And on the sidewalks, as the deputy mayor said, the idea of this was we're going to put in sidewalks, and the Board of Education will then be able to stop some busing and thus save money for themselves and everyone in general. So to me, I can understand where people want sidewalks, safety, yes, they are, but without that other component, a commitment to the Board of Ed, and I'm not saying they should, that's their decision. They don't want to stop the busing, that's certainly their prerogative. But to me, I don't want to spend $750,000 a year for sidewalks which are going to be very little used. And I know it can go in there and never fund it, but this is me. I don't like the step of putting it in there if I'm really not going to go ahead with it. So that's one thing I'd move to take that one off. If no one's on board, we'll go ahead.
I'm sorry, I slept on that one. Say it again.
I think,
Well, I believe I'll defer to the mayor to repeat what he said.
I'll paraphrase it. He is moving to not to take the 750,000.
No sidewalks, Carl.
Right.
yeah, just throw it off. Because the idea was the Board of Education, if we put that in, they were going to be able to not bus certain kids and save a lot of money, and it would overall save the taxpayers. I said, I understand the safety issue, but I don't see going ahead with this if we're not going to do it and the other component isn't there. Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Regan, Councilman Chase,
Since you did
Councilman Wright.
reference me, and I did say what I said, but just for clarity's sake, so what I would be comfortable with is taking that down to 400,000, not blowing it away totally. I think Councilman Wright has, very valid point about sidewalks. They are necessary. It's just that in my opinion, without the complete buy-in from the Board of Ed, funding it at this level, I'm just not there. So I don't necessarily want to blow it away, though I may have incorrectly inferred that by my statement. I'm more comfortable at a $400,000 level of funding.
Okay. Councilman Chase, Councilman Wright.
I suspect that what the Board of Education would do, at least if it got its act together, is cut back on the courtesy busing, but spend the money on something else, but at least something more educational than just busing. But I think perhaps Councilman Deputy Mayor Regan's idea is a good idea, and we can communicate to the Board of Education that we're cutting back on the original request precisely because they haven't gotten their act together, and maybe this will get them to concentrate their minds a little better.
Mr. Bornlocker, did you want?
Councilman, if I so, the one thing that I'll add to what I had said earlier is this. There are a number of streets, and this will go to what Councilman Wright had hit on earlier. So the plan that Mr. Healy came up with based on input from the Board of Education and the Police Department and myself and Tom, this was a joint effort here. There are two categories of streets here. There are streets where children don't walk because there are no sidewalks. And then there are streets where children do walk, but there are no sidewalks. And so certainly if there were an amount of money in the capital projects budget to do sidewalks, I think it would probably behoove us to do those sidewalks where we already have children walking if we're looking at it as a safety measure, which I have probably been the biggest proponent of sidewalks that this town has had in the last 15 or 20 years. I mean, this was something that in all of the plan reviews that I did for the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment going back to 1999, every single time a residential development was proposed, I requested sidewalks. Whether or not those got built, that was beyond my control. But I certainly am a huge proponent of sidewalks, and I think that they are a very necessary thing in residential neighborhoods throughout this town. However, I think that the overall cost here of $750,000 as proposed needed to have some offset. That's a large amount of money to budget annually for sidewalks. I think that if it's scaled back, it certainly then could be refocused in an area where they're needed now, where we have children who do walk in the street, as Councilman Wright said. And we do have plenty of those.
Councilman Wright, Councilman Kramer.
Once again, half a dozen in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It doesn't matter who pays for them, it's still coming out my pocket. And I wish we would get away from the school board. The school board. These are our kids walking up and down the street. When are we going to get away from, well, it's about the school. They need to cut back schools here, cut back busing here. Forget all that. There are kids, they're walking in the damn street. If you go down Mark Street going to Hillcrest, there's no sidewalks. Zero. Cross the street, and there's a crossing guard there. There is a crossing guard. Cross over to the street, you got a sidewalk. But if you go on the right-hand side of the road, there's no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk at all. So you got to cross the street to get a sidewalk. What are we doing? It's just crazy. We're actually saying, unless the school board does this, we won't do that. That's stupid. But yet, we're going to fund the police SUVs. We're going to get a wood chipper. We're going to do all this crap. We're going to resurface roads. What? Public safety says, do the sidewalks. And I'm sorry, you do half now. Well, you know, next year, well, gee whiz. The school board still doesn't have its act together, so now we're going to half it then. We're going to half it again. Then all of a sudden, we're not going to have it at all. Public safety demands sidewalks. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Sidewalks. And I want $750,000 in the budget to do sidewalks. If we can put all that other crap in there, some of it's legitimate, but if we can do all that sewage and all that kind of stuff, replace fire hydrants and all that kind of good stuff, why can't we build a sidewalk? Why can't we do it? We put the fire hydrants, what, a 5-year budget, 8-year budget? Where are we on fire hydrants?
That's a different budget, Council.
No, I
That's
know,
the water
but-
utility.
Yeah, I know.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I have to look it up, but
But it's still coming out my pocket, right?
no, that's ratepayer funded. That's
And it's
taxpayer
still,
funded.
and I pay my water bill.
But the hydrant replacement is $80,000.
$80,000, and I still pay it. It's coming out my pocket, no matter how you slice it. I pay a fire fund fee. It's coming out my pocket for the fire department.
Okay, so what do we need to do to move this?
No, excuse me,
What do you
I'm
need?
talking now, you're not.
Yeah. but
Yeah, I know,
you're at
no,
a
do
point
what
where
you
you
want.
support-
I'm
you are
talking.
supporting yourself
No,
now, so we
excuse
can
me,
move this
Councilman
forward.
Francois, I'm talking,
Okay.
plain and simple.
Okay, if you have
I'm
new-
not gonna shut my mouth, I'm talking.
Okay.
This is my dime.
If you have new points, go ahead.
Yeah, new point, I don't care.
Take a new
It's my dime. I was voted here like everybody else.
Carl, right now you're.
Excuse me, excuse me.
I can't keep.
If you gotta go home, go.
Okay.
If you don't wanna listen, I don't
don't
care.
wanna listen.
But I'm speaking now.
Enough.
We got our decorum. Go ahead. If you have
Enough.
other points to make, go ahead.
Sidewalks. And I will make this every single day that we walk into this room, sidewalks. And I'm sick and tired of us worrying about other crap.
You've made your point.
Okay.
No. I've made my point when you vote for the damn sidewalks.
Councilman Kramer.
Thank you. I applaud Councilman Wright's passion about this. I actually, at the last Board of Ed meeting, became a little overly passionate, got into a little bit of a heated discussion with the board president, which next time I'll be there, I'll apologize for my my tone, but not for the content. I do want this meeting so we can discuss it. Again, I agree with Councilman Regan in that, and Mayor Levine, in that I am reluctant to spend the money with the idea that it will save money without a commitment from the school board. We can put in those sidewalks. on the places where they have kids getting courtesy busing, and they can just go ahead and say, well, but we're still going to give them courtesy busing for whatever reason. So I agree with that. If, however, we have this debate and say we want to put them in for safety reasons, then we can do that. You know, I could see a number higher than Councilman Regan's, but lower than the 750, though, to start twiddling with the numbers becomes more difficult or just consuming. Just a point that for council to mull over is if I go back to the Route 27 study, which is now 8 years old, just as a point of reference, in that study, it was $500,000 for a mile of sidewalks without curbs. So this would get us about 1.5 miles of sidewalks. So I am looking to spend the money, though I wouldn't mind, no pun intended, curbing it slightly.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Councilwoman Sherman?
I just want to make sure, certainly safety is an issue, and we're all concerned about issues such as that. The analysis necessary to determine where sidewalks are needed or not needed, is that something that still needs to be done, or?
No, that was done.
That is done.
It's
That's not the school busing.
No, there are a
study.
number of pedestrian generators and receivers throughout the town. They would be the things that you would typically think of. Schools being one of them, parks, shopping centers, apartment complexes, churches, things that generate where people will walk from and to. And those things were all done as part of an analysis by our planner and put into a plan that identifies them and ranks them in importance.
They are ranked.
They are ranked.
And at some point, we have.
And schools being the most
monetized.
important.
We have them, it's a dollar attached to all of that
Well, as
analysis?
Councilman Kramer said, it's
And-
generally per linear foot for sidewalks, so it's really not that, the cost is just how many feet do you want to build times the dollar figure assigned to a linear foot of sidewalk.
So it's not a hard number.
Not a hard number to come up
Determine.
with,
Okay,
no,
thank you.
Councilwoman.
And if I can add to that, Mr. Cito, after me badgering him about 3 years ago, did give a list. However, there was never a commitment from the Board of Ed. That was an administrative list. And the top of the list was actually a place where children are already walking, so it was a safety thing, so it wasn't going to save any money. The other point I'd like to reiterate that Councilman Chase made is currently the school board is passing capped budgets or nearly capped budgets of 2%. So if we do this, it will be redirected money. It won't be less money out of your wallet. They're going to pass a roughly 2% budget every year. That's my prediction. They could prove me wrong. But as was said, they can spend that money on learning how to read as opposed to getting to school.
Okay, Councilman Prasad?
Mr. Mayor, I think we have a fiduciary responsibility from a safety point of view. The township would be liable should something happen to somebody walking on the street. And the fact that we never built any sidewalks or planned for them is an exposure of ours. I don't know what your GIF would say on that, but it's an issue we
There's
should.
many towns that have no sidewalks, and there are many residential neighborhoods that have no sidewalks. It really
So
would
there's
have
no
impact.
liability?
No, there's no liability.
Okay.
So perhaps someone could make a motion? I mean, I guess actually the mayor made a motion.
I guess I could do that. It's, and I'll just to put some, a couple other points, and Mr. Vornlocker's right. If I may stretch, I think the planning board was short-sighted not to make residential construction include the sidewalks, which people like the late, great John Grosso always used to advocate, and I thought was a good idea. They chose not to. I do not know why.
Because it's the law.
It's one of those, this is a good chart, and I know Councilman Kramer's did it and tweaked it and reanalyzed it over time, and it's actually good to put in front of us. Just because it's a good idea, again, doesn't mean we can afford it. And there's a lot of public safety, and there's a lot of recreation, and a lot of things we could do. Sidewalks are put in, sometimes residents are assessed. I'm not advocating that, but that's what happened. Where we want the sidewalks, I don't even know if the people there want it. It would be a good idea to ask them before imposing it upon them. And not because you'd be taking away part of their frontage. They may not want it. They may have whatever their reasons are, but it'd be good to know. Just me personally, and this doesn't have to matter to anyone, and maybe it shouldn't. I don't think I could be in favor of a budget with that kind of spending in there. But that's my spoiler alert. Councilman Chase.
Just on the subject of requirement of sidewalks in residential subdivisions, some years ago, the legislature, probably at the behest of the building community, passed what's called the Residential Site Improvement Standards. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure the legislator did it. I think just the Department of Community Affairs, which controls what you can ask for in sidewalks in new residential developments. It's usually on one side of the street, not on the
Correct.
other. It depends on the size of the roads in question. I think probably most of the streets where Councilman Wright would like to see sidewalks now were laid out before there was a planning board, before there were any requirements for sidewalks. So you can't blame that on the planning board. There have been occasional instances where development was very remote from any other sidewalks, that it didn't seem to the point to have sidewalks there. I'm thinking of one in my neighborhood where between the lack of traffic on a dead-end street and the width of the street, you could walk in the street all day. And the residents didn't want sidewalks constructed there, it's true. But I think in general, I'm sure we have enough need for sidewalks to keep us going for quite a few years.
We do.
So I think I'll move, just so that we get somewhere, I will move that we go with the full 750,000.
Well,
That's my man.
okay.
Your second?
Okay, we can go with that. I mean, technically, I guess we don't, because if we do nothing, the 750 comes to us, but we can do it affirmatively. Okay,
I think, and I probably will ask for some affirmative actions as we move forward beyond the sidewalks tonight, just on the couple other things that we have to talk about, because I would like to move this budget through without having to, once we introduce, without having to alter it in any significant way that requires us to reintroduce.
Point of order. There is a motion. The chairman is obligated to ask for a second.
okay. Is there a second on the motion? Okay, now,
I lost the motion.
okay, now for discussion. I'll make a motion to amend. I move to amend that 750,000 to zero.
So ask for a
Is
second.
there a second? And I'll entertain lower numbers if no one has it. Okay.
Your luck, you know.
No, it's this, look, just a point of clarification. Look, on the roads, there's a philosophical there, I understand it totally. On this, I'm not really getting it internally as much, that's why I'm pushing my luck.
The thing I don't understand, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
we've been debating the sidewalk improvements, but we have the similar issue with the salt storage facility, the $300,000, that we haven't gotten any buy-in from the BOE on that either. So I know one is a public
Well,
safety
what-
issue.
Councilwoman, the issue with the salt
We-
dome
we
is
still have to
not
move
buying.
Don't
We own
have
that
to move
property,
their
it's ours.
facility? Oh,
It's our property.
facility?
They've lived there rent-free
Okay.
for the last 20
Okay,
years.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, no, that's
I was
ours.
sitting here wondering why
No.
that was not.
Yeah, it's our property. We just need to move that trailer off of our property, and they need to relocate their operation, and we believe we have a very viable solution to
For
that.
them.
But it belongs to us.
Okay,
It's
all
ours.
So there's a
But that's
motion,
good.
we are waiting for a
That's a
second.
good clarification. Okay, moved.
Okay.
If there's no
Yeah,
second,
I
we'll,
did. I was perplexed.
if there's no second, we'll go on to discussion. Second?
Oh, discussion then.
Okay, I don't have any. So either an amendment or discussion, and if not that, we'll go to a vote. Discussion.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
I don't like voting on something I really don't know the reason why I'm doing it. Not that I don't believe it's the safety issue, that's not my point. As we looked at the streets, we said those that were rated F were the ones we were going to do first. There was a plan. I don't want to just throw a number out there without knowing what the plan is, what the need is, and maybe for the first year, we need only $300,000 to do the Fs. And I want to know the plan.
So
Okay, I think that Councilman Kramer,
Might I
not quite a motion, but a question.
Well, right, so might I suggest that we pass or at least go into introduction with this. We can change up to 5% of the budget at introduction
Pardon?
without reintroducing it. Maybe we can get a BOE meeting between now and then to get some commitment. But again, this is a plan. We don't have to spend the money, and we could have a much bigger argument, or maybe not bigger, wrong choice of words. We can have a much more directed argument when we come up with a good, solid plan. And if we don't come up with a good, solid plan, as you're suggesting, you would certainly have my vote to not proceed. But because of our restrictions of the way the law says we have to budget, I guess I'm leaning towards voting for some amount of money. So we have it, we can move forward, and then hopefully we'll get that plan, we'll get the meeting, we'll get that plan, et cetera.
I'm sorry, the meeting you're
Go ahead.
speaking of is with the Board of Education.
Board of Education.
That's not the plan I'm talking about. I'm talking about the safety plan where there are.
There is a sidewalks master plan that
Right.
was created by our planner.
And I would like to know what it would cost to do the F sidewalks.
Well, there are no, Councilwoman, I think you
said they were
can't.
rated. They
No,
were
what
rated.
I'm saying is that there are pedestrian generators that generate more pedestrians than others. They're not rated A through F like streets.
Okay.
Every single one of them is needed. The question is, we can't build all of them at once.
So how do you
then-
decide?
You
Decide where there's the most usage?
Exactly, which is, we have multi-million dollars that are generated by Franklin Middle School. That was the first part of this plan. Every single one of these $750,000 that's budgeted in the next 5 years is just to address those sidewalks that would be in a 2-mile radius of Franklin Middle School that would be for that particular pedestrian generator. That alone is not enough to cover the cost of all of those sidewalks necessary in that 2-mile radius. 5 years out, we're still paying $750,000 a year just to get those sidewalks done, and no others.
Now, if I might project that, if it does go through, the staff would send a proposal to Public Works, which would come to the council to vote on where the sidewalks are going to go.
I think that.
It's already exists.
No, Mayor, I don't think what you're talking about is more the way we deal with streets is that it's vetted through the Public Works Committee. This is to, most bang for your buck kind of thing. This is, if you give me 100,000, 500, 750, 2 million, whatever the number is, then we're going to look at it and see where it makes the most sense. This really has to do more so with getting the students to the school and from the school to their homes based on where there are missing links of sidewalks throughout the 2-mile radius of the school. And the reason 2 miles is because that's the state standard for walkers from their home to the school. And then it also encompasses, when you do that 2-mile radius of the middle school, it then draws in Pine Grove Manor School, Hillcrest School, McAfee Road School, and Connerly Road School, as well as St. Matthias. So because of that, it's a major benefit to fill in the voids that exist throughout all of those neighborhoods, all of which are, as we earlier said, in the 4th and 5th wards that surround the middle school. The plan is in place. The streets have been identified. The surveys have been done as to where they're needed. Now it's just a matter of making sense of the missing links to fill in the voids to get from the furthest point in, and you work from the school out so that you begin to benefit immediately students who would walk. You don't start at the furthest reaches of the 2-mile. You start at the core, the school, and work your way out. I believe Councilman Wright mentioned Hillcrest Avenue. Hillcrest Avenue is right behind the middle school and has no sidewalks. It's one of those streets on the list that was identified. I'd say there's probably a pretty good likelihood that if we moved forward with this, that'd probably be one of the first streets that would get done, just simply because there is a logical progression as you move further out from the core.
Okay, now, in furtherance for Councilwoman Sherman, I'm guessing if you would say, okay, if you give me 500 or 750 or $1 million, I will pave these streets. Well, not pave, I will build sidewalks here, and then the council has to approve it before you
Well,
put your cement on the
it would
ground.
be a capital project, so obviously you would have an ordinance that would approve it as that project moves forward, like anything
Right,
else that we
okay.
do when it comes to time, when it comes time to move forward with the project, there would be an ordinance in this particular case that would approve the fund, if this is a capital ordinance or a bond ordinance, depending on the method of funding. In this particular case, I'd assume bond ordinance.
So can I ask a point of clarification? So we're looking at 750,000 in this budget, and then we budgeted another 750,000 for 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19.
Well, we haven't budgeted anything.
We're projecting
What
that
I'm
that's
saying,
what it would
absolutely,
cost
that is part of
to
the
get
capital.
everything done?
Absolutely.
A 5-year
Yes.
plan to get all that done?
That's our that's our 5-year plan right now. That
Right.
5-year plan changes every year
Every
because we
year.
add another year. And my guess is that depending on council's, movement on this particular subject, that could go out well beyond 5 years. Because this plan that's been developed includes sidewalks in other parts of the township where there are missing sidewalks. Franklin Park has missing sidewalks. In the 2nd Ward along Elizabeth Avenue, and Weston, there was proposals for sidewalks in those areas. Certainly, Councilman Prasad has had, my conversation with me and in this council chambers as far as the need for sidewalks to connect places like the Corman communities with the ShopRite and the shopping centers down along Elizabeth Avenue.
But to piggyback on Councilwoman
Yes.
Sherman's question, the $750,000 that we would be appropriating this year, we have a definitive plan on what
We do.
we've identified what those sidewalks are.
Those sidewalks are.
In the 4th and the 5th ward.
They're absolutely, they're the sidewalks that stem out from the center, which is the center being the Franklin Middle School. That is the plan.
So that is the 4th and 5th ward.
Correct, the 4th and 5th ward.
And, Mr. Mayor, you don't live in the 4th and 5th ward, so I can see you wanting to cut the budget, but the point is, this is money needed to get the sidewalk program done. Either we believe in it or we don't, but this is also the safety of our kids, and we need to do it.
And if
So I oppose your cut.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, just because I'm going to answer that, so it's unfair of you to say that I don't live in a particular ward. Everyone in this town is my constituent. I'm concerned with everybody in this town, and I've spent time in all areas. I've served on boards. I've been there everywhere, so I take objection to thinking that just because I do not live in a particular part of town, I'm not concerned about it. And I'm also, I'm concerned, I do it, but there's practicalities too. I'm saying it again, just because something's a good idea doesn't mean I can afford it. We do that at home. Every business does that, or they go broke. And as a municipality, we have to too. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying I can't afford it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Councilman Vasanella asked, and Deputy Mayor.
I was just,
Go
because
ahead.
we've had the motion, it's been seconded, there has been, including myself, discussion on this. I'd like to get to the point where we give the direction to the manager now on moving it as it was, whoever made the motion, it was seconded by call.
You're calling for the vote.
Yes, I am calling for the
Councilman
vote.
Regan, could I just ask a question, Councilman Regan?
Councilman Vasanella hasn't said anything.
It's not even about the school sidewalks so much, but I wanted to know, would it be, it's sidewalk relevant. There's sidewalks, I imagine, all over the town, but I know in the 4th and 5th Ward that often because of trees that the township planted and other reasons, the sidewalks are in terrible conditions in certain areas. We have no problem with sidewalks in town? Is that, you're shaking your head? Oh,
No,
sorry.
not
I
at all.
don't-
No.
Well, you were
I'm
shaking-
listening to every word.
Oh, okay.
I think I know where you're going to go with this.
I just want to know, and this isn't judging that, I wanted to know, judging the school sidewalk, where is the money come? Because I think that problem is a little larger than people think, or at least it's large enough that I get concerned about not fixing what we have up to good safety standards and starting to build new. I'm not against building new, but
Councilman, without getting into any great detail here, because I think that this is off on a tangent.
Well, I want to know because...
You and I should talk about this offline.
Okay.
You and I should talk about this offline, because I think what you're speaking about is, in particular, is the email that you sent to me.
Well, that's one of a lot of situations like that.
That particular issue is being contested by our township attorney, who does not agree with that ruling, and the responsibility to repair sidewalks clearly falls based on state law and our township ordinance on the homeowner, not the township. So like I said, without belaboring that, you and I can certainly have a discussion about it, but I don't know that is in particular related to this conversation.
Well, it's related in as much, excuse me, it's related in as much as, for me, to be comfortable voting on this type of allocation of funds, which is going to involve staff work and getting these things done, I'd like to know we're going to have safe sidewalks where sidewalks already exist, because it's all part of the same system. So if a kid's walking down a new sidewalk and he's tripping, whether it's the responsibility of the resident or the town, we don't seem to have gotten
The fund,
on top of
I don't
things,
know that
but-
we're discussing funding here, and my
Okay.
position is
Okay.
funding
Mayor.
it for
Yeah.
things
If I
that
can-
are not our responsibility. I
Could I
can't speak to.
I just
We
want to ask
properly
one
moved and
question,
seconded?
just based on that. This money would not go towards sidewalk repairs. That's
correct.
Unless it's on township property.
That's correct. This is, the intent of this capital project is the construction of new sidewalks.
Okay.
I
But that
second the
can come
call
up-
for the vote.
Okay.
Thank
Now, here's just where we are. Okay. It's at 7:50. I heard mention of other amounts, either a motion for some other amount, or we'll go to the vote. And otherwise,
We have a motion and a second for the call for the vote.
I know, I'm just giving credence to, I heard other amounts. If I don't hear a motion to change the amount, we'll go to the vote.
Robert is turning in his grave.
Hey, I give everyone their respect. I heard 3, 4. I'm trying to be respectful to people.
So the silence indicates vote.
Yeah, well, keep talking.
It's okay.
And Robert would not be turning in his grave. He might be proud that I was trying to give elected people the right to give information.
Just teasing, Mr.
All right, then okay, then I'll allow him to turn in his grave. Thank you. Ms. Woodbury, can you poll the council? A yes vote means go with the 750,000 on improvements as listed in the budget. A no vote means don't put it in there, and we might have another amount or zero.
Yes.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, so we're voting on 750?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Councilman Prasad?
He would,
Oh,
he checked
absent, okay.
Deputy Mayor Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
No.
Councilman Vasanella?
Abstain.
Mr. Prasad is,
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Prasad?
Is that the mayor's motion?
No.
No.
750, leaving it at 750.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so I have a 5-2-1, Ms. Woodbury, you have that? Okay. Okay, and one abstain. Okay, so the motion carries, that'll come to us in the budget as it is here,
Yes, sir.
as introduced. Okay, do you want to?
Anything else on capital budget?
No.
Any
Okay.
other capital? Okay, go on to the
All
next
right.
issue.
So
Mr. Zelnick, thank you very much.
Oh, Tommy, you can't leave. Sorry.
No.
The entertainment
You can't
portion
leave
is
it.
coming.
So there,
It's your
as
turn to bite
when I
peanuts.
started
Yeah.
the meeting, I mentioned that there are several other decisions that I think that we just need to clarify. As we move through the department head presentations, there was a request for a part-time employee, additional part-time employee in the municipal court. There was a request for 2 part-time employees in the IT department, and there was a request of the Recreation Department to elevate a part-time position to a full-time position. Is there, there was lengthy discussion at the department head presentations on all of those, and so I certainly don't think that we need to discuss the department heads' requests themselves, but certainly I think I'm looking for some input if there is any discussion as to whether we should or should not
Okay.
make
these-
those increases in staff.
Pardon me, okay, so those positions are in the budget.
They are in the
So if we
budget.
do nothing, they're going to come to us in the
They will stay,
budget.
they will be there, and if the budget is adopted, they will be there for them to be filled.
Yeah, so the question is, anyone either question or discussion or want to pull any of those out? Councilman Kramer.
so I would like to discuss the halftime person for the GIS. GIS is extremely important. It helps us, for those watching, it's kind of a map system, an annotated map system that has many layers. So you have one layer that shows your streets, and other layers that shows your water, sewer. Everything gets its own layer. You can even break down the valves as a separate level. It helps one plan, and if anyone has watched any of these council meetings, I'm a planner. So it is important, but I also, as the mayor was speaking about before, the money's running out. We have the graph up there showing that we're going off a cliff eventually. So I would like to save money. I would like to not grow government. We were getting by before without a GIS person. One of the people in engineering was doing it part-time. However, what I would like to, and the mayor and I are working on this together, is come up with a way to have that position, but not actually overall save money for the government, or for the people, which the mayor espoused to earlier today. And that would be through a shared service item. Currently, the library has its own IT budget. It hires a consultant and pays $60,000 for that consultant. The mayor and I went to one library board meeting. The mayor is a voting member on that board and appoints the board. And I discussed I discussed with them allowing our IT staff the ability to do it. I won't go through with their objections, but I plan to go back addressing their objections. So to make a long story short, I would like to, I wanted to cut the GIS half-time job. While I was lobbying Councilman Chase, he came up with a better idea to fund the job, leave it in the budget, but not hire the person until we get the library board, so I guess this would be kind of an agreement or an instruction to the manager or whatever, until the library board agrees to let us do a shared service. And if they don't, then essentially we don't fill that position, because in my opinion, we can't afford it. And Councilman Chase has his hand up, so maybe I misrepresented him. But that is my proposal. To do that.
I will be more than happy to listen.
Mr. Vornlocker?
I would love to
And
hear
Councilman
Councilman Chase first.
Okay, Councilman Chase, go ahead.
Well, you haven't misrepresented me, but I've thought a little more.
Uh-oh.
And I don't think the library would use the GIS person. They would probably use the help desk
They
person
would.
more. And I think the real point is that if we have help desk and GIS persons, that relieves the more senior members of IT of lower-level activities and makes them better able to handle the higher-level things, such as making the library's computers work more efficiently. One thing that crossed my mind, and I think Mr. Vornlocker has mentioned that we could fund part of the GIS person through the water budget,
We can.
and I should think perhaps some fraction through the construction department.
Well, the construction department is still funded out of the general fund, so that while it's kind of
Well, it reduces the surplus that they're
oranges and
accumulating.
tangerines, but yes, it reduces the surplus. There are certain things that, the GIS could be funded through certain aspects of escrow. And certainly, in this particular case, I'm very comfortable with 50% of the salary being funded out of water. The initial, work that the GIS position would do would be really a lot of work with the water utility to bring us up to snuff on that. Now,
I just looked back at the department request, and Justin has pointed out that he's cut the OE budget by $30,000, so that even with his 2 part-time positions and 1 upgrade, the net increase is only $28,000. I'll also mention, last Saturday I was at the Land Conservation Rally, and the planner from Montgomery Township spoke about things they were doing and mentioned that they have 1 full-time GIS person. They used to have 2 full-time GIS persons, and Montgomery certainly doesn't have the tax base that we have. It's not as large, pretty nearly as large, but not even as large in area. Certainly doesn't have the water system that we have, and yet they think that a GIS person is that important. So I really would like to. And a final point is, we just had a consultant in who talked to us just a couple of meetings ago about how unfunded, how poorly funded our IT department is. If we're going to spend the money on the consultant, we ought to pay some attention to what the consultant says. So
now that is well said, and my only addition to this is It was stated that we previously had someone in the engineering department who did this part-time. And I think that that's probably not a full representation of the circumstance. Our assistant engineer did what he could to keep our GIS program afloat while performing all of the functions of an assistant engineer. He has since moved on to a new position in the township in the Public Works Department. We currently have a vacancy in the engineering department, and we intend to fill it. So while I take direction well. If I am directed to leave this in the budget yet not fill it, that is what I will do. But I will tell you what the issues are for me. I must fill an assistant engineering position. An assistant engineer needs to be hired. And if I am not to get a GIS part-time employee, then I need to find an assistant engineer who has GIS experience. If I'm going to fill the GIS position, then I don't need an assistant engineer with GIS experience. So it has an impact on my ability to fill that assistant engineer position. And I'll leave you at that.
Just one question.
Councilman Prasad?
Do we also, as part of the GIS system, map the sewer pipes?
We do not do sewer. The storm sewer, yes. Sanitary sewer, no. Sanitary would be the responsibility.
Sewage authority has nothing
Sewage
to do with
authority
the storm sewer.
already has their own. No, they have their own GIS layers for their sewer system. In fact, their GIS currently is one that we use frequently because it is better than ours.
Okay. Well, I thought they would pay part of it, and that way you'd find a solution.
They're actually a few steps ahead of us in that particular. Yeah. It doesn't play out for shared services because they're actually ahead of us on this. They're in pretty good shape.
Okay.
Clarify.
Microphone?
Half of the person that would be assigned.
Mike?
Microphone.
Just to clarify, the half of the position that would be assigned to the township is only $12,350 and no benefits. So just so that you're aware, that's what we're talking about, $12,350 to the township budget and no benefits. And if Justin doesn't get it, the consultant fees will probably go back up in the OE budget.
I think actually, going back.
That's true of the help desk, that's not true. of the-
That's correct.
That's not true of the GIS.
The GIS is just something that would now have to go back out amongst, scattered amongst other staff members. And like I said, and again, with the point person having been the assistant engineer, the need to find someone with GIS experience.
Now,
Yes, Counsel.
looking at page 107,
I think he made a compelling case.
what Justin was asking for was $24,700.
At that level.
That's for 25 hours per week, which is.
That's correct. If you look at the master salary spreadsheet, which is at the very beginning of your budget workbook, the vacancies are listed on page 10. And on page 10, the vacancy is listed for the GIS technician at $24,700 with $12,350 appropriated as a water allocation. So it's 50%.
I see, yeah.
The allocations are not on the individual department spreadsheets, they're on the master spreadsheet. So the allocation is on page 10, it's at the very beginning of your budget book on a spreadsheet that is a number of pages salary spreadsheet. Page 10 lists the vacancies that we currently have, both existing positions where there are vacancies so that we account for their salaries, and the vacancies that are on for these proposed positions. And as you see, the GIS position has a 50% allocation to water.
Okay. Is that a motion of some sort, or you're just making an observation? Do you want it, with that motion, it's going to come into it with us? I guess you can always put
No,
your
because,
caveat.
I mean, I guess I'm proposing that it's funded but not filled. So I don't know that there's anything different. I mean, the manager, the purpose of this meeting is to direct the manager as to what to present the budget, so I will bring it up again.
And so, just so we're clear, this particular position will not cause us, if it were to be removed after introduction of the budget, it would not cause us to have to re-advertise and reintroduce. It's not a significant amount of money in the overall picture here. So certainly this discussion could be had. We have a meeting on Wednesday that Councilman Kramer and I will be attending with Justin Hyman to discuss the shared service agreement, the shared service idea with the library. Perhaps we'll have some headway made as a result of that, and this can be further looked at.
Just to make my point clear, I'm not asking the library to fund the GIS person. I'm asking them to do a shared service, and the added income to the IT department saves the township $50,000 to $60,000, and in that savings, we can pay for the GIS person.
So just the revenues offsetting the appropriations, basically.
So, Mayor?
I just want one clarification.
Sure.
Thank you. So are you saying if that position, is hired,
Yes.
it in essence will cost, the taxpayers, if you will, $13,000?
It'll cost the taxpayers $13,000, and it'll cost the water ratepayers $13,000. That's about right.
Okay.
Ultimately cost $26,000 from the residents.
Excuse me?
It will ultimately cost $26,000.
Total 26, but not to the taxpayer.
It's just split up, but it
Well,
ultimately-
but understand that the ratepayer doesn't equal the taxpayer, so
Sure.
the taxpayer as a whole in town
Sure.
pays 13, and the water ratepayer pays 13.
So, getting back to Councilman Kramer's last comment, I'm just not understanding. If you have a shared service, which is great, I'd love to go with the shared service, and you have X amount of hours in a day, and the person that you would be having take care of the shared service responsibility at the library, if their schedule is completely filled up and they're working, for them to then take time, and I'm trying to understand how we save $60,000 without I know there's certain tasks that we do anyway. I understand there's certain things, certain software.
It's a
I
huge
understand.
portion of it.
But you're saying there's no man hours,
We're
people
increasing-
hours involved? Because the math doesn't add up if you have.
Well, if you look at the proposal from IT and their budget compared to last year.
No, I'm talking about for library.
No, well, the shared service would be served by the IT department. So there's a request for an increase in a part-time position, but there's a decrease in the amount of OE budget due to the decrease in the amount of money budgeted for outside consultants, because a shift in the responsibilities of the existing staff will allow for more work to be done that is currently being farmed out to consultants. The additional part-time staff member would then be able to pick up some of the slack that would be created by the reassignment of existing personnel, and that would also free up personnel to service the library if they needed. Most of the savings and most of the money spent by the library board on their consultant is for work that is redundant with ours, so that there is a savings just based on that economy of scale in certain circumstances, and just by redundant services that are provided. The actual help desk work, or the response to the library, that work can certainly be picked up in between the work that's currently being done to service the municipality's network. So, it's been looked at, it's been analyzed by our department director, and he feels comfortable in saying that with the increase in staff that's proposed and the realignment of existing staff, that he will be able to handle the additional workload at the library. It's as simple as that.
And if we don't get the library contract? shared services contract?
Then that means more work that can be done on our part, that we can reduce the consultant load even more by just not spending it.
So either way, then the employees would be utilized 100%.
I think that if you look at the work that was done by our consultant to do an analyzation of our current workload in the IT department, you'll find that we're probably understaffed by 2 or 3 already. So, yes, there's more than enough work to go around, Councilman.
Okay. Others on the, just clarificate, you're leaving the budget as it is, but you might clarify whether we should fill it. Okay, thank you. Anything else on any of these positions? If nothing, they'll come to us as we discussed.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Deputy Mayor Regan?
No, okay. So I guess really the last topic of conversation was really kind of hit on by Councilman Kramer when he did his presentation earlier, which is still up on the screen. And this budget, as has been discussed, is proposed with a 4% increase, and the fund balance utilization is indicated on Schedule A in the very beginning of your budget books. This budget, if it is presented as it was presented to you, is what is reflected in Schedule A. Thank you. For the calendar year, and that's with a proposed use in fund balance of $5.839 million, which is a decrease of fund balance usage of about $1.12 million from 2013. And the 4% increase results in a municipal increase of $41.68 on the average home.
No, is that the 4% I see near the middle of the page in the right column?
That is,
Amount to be
Mayor.
raised?
Amount to be raised, municipal, and that's the 4% to raise the amount to be raised from $32,076,000 to $33,359,000.
And the,
For those listening, what we're saying is raising taxes 4%. It was
Raising the amount collected 4%.
Correct. Raising the amount to be raised by
3.04.
taxes, raising that number by 4%, yes.
and where I was battling with their terminology, the utilization of the net of fund
The
balance or
fund
savings
balance,
account. or
correct,
however
the
you put it,
savings account.
Where do I see that one?
At the very top line, fund balance, under current fund revenues,
Fund balance.
Fund balance.
1.121933.
that's the 1.121933 is the difference from 2014 from 2013. That's a
Okay.
decrease of 16%
Right.
of the fund balance utilization.
Laid out very nicely, thank you.
So I'll make the motion to put forth the direction to, as the township manager has on the sheet laid out today for us, for this to get put together for the formal introduction.
Seconded.
Although we don't technically have to vote, but we could.
No, and you don't have to,
Why are
but
we voting?
I certainly appreciate the direction. I did this last year, and I think that in the end, we're looking to expedite this process, and you'll all vote on it a couple more times before we're done, but rather than me, go through the process only to have you not want
Vote it
what
down.
you're seeing on the 8th, I would prefer to do it this way.
Yep.
Okay, I guess I'll just do it by a voice vote, and even though for what I stated, I may not go with the budget for the reasons I said, I'm probably going to vote yes to go ahead, just because that was the consensus of council. That's the budget that the manager gave us, so just an explanation in advance, but a caveat about what could be a foreshadow. Any other discussion?
Mayor, I have a
Okay.
question.
Oh, Councilman Vasanelli?
So you're taking the fund balance, 1.1 million less, you're taking out of it 1.1 million less than you did last year?
Yes.
Is that what I heard?
That's correct.
So what would be the percentage increase approximately if you took half of 1.1 million less from the fund balance?
So you're basically saying, instead of using 5.8, use 6.3, 6.4.
Whatever would be half, you could even,
I got to do a lot of math in my head real
Okay,
fast.
round it off.
Councilman.
No, just
To be
round it off.
perfectly honest, I got to do it real,
Okay.
it's not as simple as that. It's, got to do a lot of math in my head to
Yeah.
figure that
so
out.
$500,000, I guess, just
For
550, whatever.
550. No,
Are-
what I'm saying is,
Are you asking to take more out of fund balance?
No, I'm asking
to take
what
less,
the net,
so I got to do
the net
backwards math.
tax increase. Right now, it's 4% as it stands.
What I will tell you is that if you take the
Wait, I'm
fund
sorry,
balance-
if Mr. Vasanella can answer, clarify your question, Commissioner.
Yes, right now, it's a net 4% increase in taxes for the average homeowner. What I'm asking is if instead of 1.1 million less taken out,
Mhm.
we only took out I guess it would be 550,000 less.
So in other words, take more out of fund balance.
Well, more, but
Thank
still
you.
still less than last year.
No,
I got it.
No,
I got
Yes.
less, I think he's saying,
More out of fund
Phil's
balance
got
than
it.
what is proposed.
Half of what, instead of
Right.
taking out the 1.
take more
Yeah.
fund balance and less out of,
Yes.
oh, I had it wrong.
So if you make the difference only 500 and some odd thousand, that means instead of it being 5.839, it's about 6.4, 6.3, 6.4, which is what I said. Now, do the backwards math here to get to a percentage. As much as I'd like to say that I'm good at math, Councilman, my brain is just not going to calculate that right now. What I can tell you is this. Instead of 4%, if in fact it was 3.5%, okay, we're going to take that 5.839, and what we're going to add?
I'm
How much?
getting a back of the envelope of like 5.9%.
5.9?
Yeah.
What's that 5? You're
Oh,
at,
then if we took less out of fund balance, the taxes would go up 5.9?
No, he's
down.
trying to
It'll go
lower
down.
taxes.
No, if I use more
The other
fund
way.
balance, my tax rate goes down.
Oh, okay.
My tax rate increase goes down.
And he wants to take a $500,000
What are you saying?
Got it.
less, so how much, this 4%,
All right, if you take, all right, so this is about the closest I can come with a number that Kathy has prepared for me.
3.3.
Because she must have anticipated this question, is if you take it down and use another $481,000 of fund balance, so that's close to your number.
That's fine.
That's a 2.5% increase.
2.5%.
Now I'm getting 2.4.
Okay.
Okay.
I got 2.5 here.
So I don't know the formalities of the vote, but I would, if we're doing a vote, I would ask council to consider whether it's technically a motion to amend or not, I don't know.
Well, I don't think it's any one of those things.
But I
My
would-
budget until I give it to you. I'm
okay.
just looking for
So
some
I-
guidance
so-
and consensus opinion.
So as
Okay.
much as the guidance we're going to give you tonight, I would ask council to consider doing
Okay.
exactly what the number that
So
you
when-
had repeated, as opposed to the 4%.
A good mechanism may be when the budget comes for introduction, that would be a legitimate item to amend the budget.
I'm just mentioning tonight because the manager was asking
that
for
would
a
require
direction.
reintroduction.
No, it wouldn't. That's the number.
That's within?
That's right at the number.
I'm saying before we introduce, well, I guess it's advertised before then? No, okay.
You're fine,
on
you're
the
fine.
night of-
What?
On the night of, on the night of
And that's fine.
introduction,
Well, I threw it out now,
Moving-
so no one was
At
surprised.
night of introduction, at night of, there's,
we can make proposals to move things
Absolutely.
around. So that might be the good venue for it.
Mm-hmm. The night of introduction is
Oh,
fine.
here comes Andy.
Uh-oh.
No, introduction is,
It's always bad when Andy comes up to the front row.
no, exactly. I said, a night of introduction is fine. That's
Yeah, 'cause
absolutely,
Once it's introduced, now you're,
and it is,
then
and
it's
I still
advertised.
think that if, once it's introduced, I think that we could still have some discussion about where that rate gets set and where that,
right.
the utilization of fund balance gets set, and I still think that we could manage to get a budget introduced and adopted in the proper amount of time.
Okay. Councilman Chase, still, did you want to say something or not?
Well, I was just going to say, I think we should stick with the budget as planned. Councilman Kramer has often pointed out that we're we're always trying to find a path through between asking the taxpayer for a little more and making as many economies as we can. But his graphic is up on the screen. If instead of a 4% increase, we have a 3.5 increase in what we collect, well, we continue at that rate, we're a lot closer to zero in 2018. So I would prefer to stick with what we have.
Okay.
Right, and just to add to
Was that
that.
2.5 in tax rate or 2.5
2.5%
in amount
increase in tax
collected?
rate. 2.5%
That's what I
increase in
thought.
tax rate
Yeah.
then results in about a $400 and some odd $1,000 reduction, $480,000 reduction in fund balance utilization. However, I just want to reiterate this has been discussed going back to the beginning. This budget year also includes 2 one-time revenue sources that you should not anticipate in future years. And that's the FEMA reimbursement that was about $400,000 and about $320,000 in a liquor license sale. So you're talking about $700. Now, so take that $700 and some odd $1,000 of revenue that you should not anticipate in 2015, and that kind of negates anything as far as the utilization of fund balance and the adjustment of that utilization, and that's why the proposal is what it is.
Of course, we also hope it won't snow $600,000.
We also hope it won't snow
worth.
$900,000 worth. You're right.
Okay, so we can go, if there's nothing else, to the vote to tell the manager, go ahead, introduce your budget. It is your budget. You can actually do whatever you want with it, of course.
I can, and I don't know that I need a vote. I think I can look from right to left, and I think that I'll be introducing the budget that you have in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Is that a
thank
good
you.
way to do it? Okay, good. If nothing else, we could go to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? We are adjourned. We will see you here in, like 20 hours? No, yeah, about that.
Yeah, it's actually not far from the water.
That's right. That's right. It's almost tomorrow.
It's a delicate balance between maintaining